Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto learns Hummingbird style. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Acaykath and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Prologue. Death of a Hero. Author notes. A dictionary of terms not found in canon can be found in Appendix C of the epilogue chapter. For all others, visit naruto.wikia.com. I claim ownership only of that which belongs to me. Everything else belongs to Masashi Kishimoto, Weekly Shonen Jump, Viz Media, and whoever else holds rights to the Naruto franchise. Prologue. Death of a Hero. Minato Namikaze threw a kunai at the teleporting bastard. The space-time jutsu the man was using pissed him off. The fact that the man had released the Kyuubi no Kitsune upon his village and used the Mangekyo Sharingan to make it attack pissed him off more. That in order to release the Kyuubi, the man had killed his pregnant wife, Kushina Uzumaki, made him see red. His only consolation was that he had driven the man away, while the medics did everything in their power to save his newborn son, Naruto. He gathered a swirling ball of chakra into his hand and disappeared in a yellow flash of light that disoriented his opponent for a moment as he instantly traversed the distance between them and shoved the Rasengan into the Uchiha's side. This time, Minato, the fourth Hokage of Konoha, the yellow flash, had been fast enough. The Uchiha had phased his body too slowly and the Rasengan had torn away a large section of the black cloak with red clouds that he wore. "I think I've kept you long enough," the Uchiha chuckled as a massive explosion came from the direction of the city. His side was covered in bloody bruises and a rib jutted out through his skin. "Don't keep the Kyuubi waiting too long, Hokage-sama." The title was pronounced with a distinct lack of reverence and a good helping of sarcasm as the Uchiha disappeared in a swirling vortex. Only when he was sure the man was gone did Minato turn to see what was happening to his beloved ninja village hidden in the leaves. The nine-tailed demon fox had breached the gates and was slowly making its way into the town. A giant toad appeared and a massive barrier temporarily halted the demon's progress. His sensei was holding the monster back for now, but it had already unleashed a devastating level of damage upon the village. He had always known this was a possibility. Childbirth would disrupt the flow of chakra to the seal and weaken it. This was the reason that Minato had taken his wife outside the city when she had gone into labor. In a flash of light, he was at his wife's side. He knew what he had to do and he was ready to do it to save the people of the village, but he had to know. She lay on the cold stone ground, unmoving. Kneeling down, he traced a hand along her cheek and found it to be cold and lifeless. His stomach was split vertically, revealing an empty uterus and severed umbilical cord. Turning, he saw the two medics, both dead. His heart sank, he wondered if perhaps the man had beaten him here just to take his child away before he even got a chance to see it. No, there was a faint mewling cry for attention. Next to one of the medics was a cloth-wrapped bundle. He picked it up gingerly and saw the baby's scrunched-up face. Minato flicked the blanket back to check the gender. He was obviously unhappy about not having any attention. He turned to the bodies of the medics. Their wounds had stopped bleeding a long time ago, but Minato knew that with their skill, they could have easily saved each other, but instead chose to save his son. "Thank you," he bowed to the remains of the two medics. "No one else will get the chance to hear what you have done for me, but I will remember it for the rest of my life, even if that is not a long time." He looked sadly down upon his son and said, "I will be leaving you soon, and I am sorry for what will happen because of what I am about to do, but I cannot ask anyone else to do this. I cannot ask one of the villages to make a sacrifice that I would not make myself. You have your mother's blood running through your veins, and with any luck, her bloodline as well, so you are the only one I can trust with this mission, my son, Naruto Uzumaki." Minato stroked the child's face where scars like whiskers stood out like great red gashes. "Perhaps, you will one day pay that fox back for these. You lived with him for 9 months before you were born, and now, he will be yours, your parents' legacy." He gave a bark of laughter before tears began to trickle down his face, and he used the Hiraishin to teleport to Jiraiya. "Minato, you're back. What happened?" Jiraiya of the Sannin asked before launching a fireball into the stream of oil that the toad boss Gamabunta had spat at the Kyuubi. "An Uchiha. He had the Mangekyo," Minato said. "Gamabunta, can you hold the fox for 30 seconds? "You're pushing a kid," Gamabunta grunted and launched himself into the Kyuubi as Minato began to perform a series of hand seals. "You can't be serious, Minato, this jutsu will kill you," Jiraiya said as he recognized the jutsu. "Jiraiya, your godson's name is Naruto Uzumaki. Make sure the village treats him like a hero." Minato's hand sign stopped and a ghostly figure appeared behind him, even if only he and the Kyuubi could see it. Fuin Jutsu. Shiki Fujin. Minato laid a hand upon Naruto's stomach and a sealing array spread out across the boy's stomach and spread across his body until there was little skin not covered in the marks. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the sealing array shrank and compressed until only a circle covering almost his entire stomach retained them as the Kyuubi was sucked into his stomach. The marks glowed an angry red for a moment before Minato collapsed as his soul was torn from his body. Half a second after the collapse, Jiraiya slammed his own hand into Minato's body, applying a preservation seal. Moments later, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, arrived on the scene. Jiraiya picked up the child who was crying. "I bet that fox is making quite a ruckus in there right now." As that Sarutobi trailed off. There was no mistaking the vibrant blue eyes and the wisps of golden hair. "This is Minato's son, Naruto Uzumaki." The third Hokage sighed, "I suppose my retirement is finished." Chapter 1. Many unhappy returns. Chapter 1. Many unhappy returns. The seals on Minato's body began to fade. His eyes cracked open and he glanced around. Even that small amount of effort wearied him. It was like his body was consuming every ounce of chakra it could generate. He felt weak and his eyes were blinded by the darkness of the room. He was cold and his back ached from the smooth hard surface he was lying on. His eyes adjusted and he slowly became aware of where he was. He had only been here once on the day he had taken office. It was an SS rank secret that the bodies of famous ninja were preserved in a marble vault deep below the Hokage's office. He could see a blank slab to his left before two others which contained two other dead Hokages. He groaned in pain as he sat up, but he knew he wasn't dead. There was no way that being dead could hurt this much. It took a minute for his knees to stop shaking when he stood up, but then he stumbled to the spiral staircase which he began to climb. Minato reached the top of the staircase after only 3 short breaks to rest. Pressing a secret latch caused the blank marble wall ahead of him to spring open and he tumbled into his office. Staggering forward, he collapsed into his chair and that was when he noticed something was wrong. It was not the massive piles of paperwork, no. Those he had yet to discover a method of properly dealing with it was the picture of Hiruzen Sarutobi and his son Asuma in the spot that he distinctly remembered putting a picture of Kushina. Glancing at the calendar, his heart almost stopped. It had been 5 years since he had sealed the Kyuubi, expecting to die. He wondered briefly how he had survived, but supposed that the last fraction of his soul had been sealed within his body when Jiraiya had placed the preservation seal, which had kept him from starving or decomposing, as he had lay in a death-like state. He chuckled to think that his sensei's teammate would kill to have luck like that. He glanced around some more and saw another picture of a young boy with a bright smile and bright blonde hair. He could tell at once that this was his son, he would recognize those whisker marks anywhere. It made him happy to think that Hiruzen had taken care of his boy while he was indisposed. There was a half-empty mug on the desk and Minato grabbed it, downing the bitter and cold coffee in a single gulp. The preservation seal had never been meant to be used on a living body and had required more energy than the ambient chakra in the air to keep him going, and he supposed that it had used its own energy until it had crumbled, awakening him. He checked the drawers of the desk. He found a copy of his sensei's perverted book and it was a new volume. He had only seen the first and the one he had found was already on volume 4 of a new series. After some more rummaging, he came across some ration bars and gulped them down hungrily. Minato could feel some of his strength returning already. He wished that he could have some of Kushina's home cooking right now, however, he knew he mustn't dwell on it. He could grieve later, after he had seen his son. Minato headed out, but only went a few blocks before sneaking into Anbu headquarters. He knew that everyone must think him dead right now and it wouldn't be right to cause a panic. He activated the Taunton Jutsu that Jiraiya had taught him and his body shimmered out of existence. He was surprised at how much chakra the below D-rank jutsu seemed to use. The one jutsu had completely exhausted him. He crept quietly into the weapons vault, avoiding patrols. It was a little known fact that the animals on the masks could not be chosen at random. Whenever an Anbu retired or died, if they had a particularly distinguished service record, their mask would be locked in the sealed vault. For less impressive members of the group, their masks were returned to circulation. Minato drew blood by biting his thumb and swiped it across the entrance to the sealed vault. It opened for him. The masks in this vault were only returned to circulation in 3 cases. If the user returned to service, if the user's apprentice joined, or if the child of the user joined. Minato found his mask right where he had left it. It hung on a hook with a standard set of Anbu equipment, as well as a single 3-pronged kunai to use with his Hiraishin technique. Minato slipped into the standard issue Anbu bodysuit and strapped the armor to his body. He slung the katana sheath over his shoulder and attached the tool pouch to his thigh. When he thought he had everything secure, he drew the sword and examined himself in the reflection. He was shocked by his discovery. His once bright locks of hair had paled almost to a white and his brilliant blue eyes to an icy gray. His skin had lost its healthy tan and had become sickly pale. He looked like he had one foot in the grave, well frankly it looked more like both feet were in the grave and he was only clinging to life by the tips of his fingers. At least his mask still looked the same. He remembered when he had reinforced it with seals so he could use the beak when delivering a headbutt. The Hummingbird had been a particularly fearsome Anbu before he had retired to become a Jounin sensei to Kakashi, Obito and Rin. He wondered if his students had survived the Kyuubi attack or any of the people he knew other than Jiraiya and Hiruzen. Fortunately, Anbu's service was usually a short career. Most of the Anbu had been academy students the last time the Hummingbird mask had graced his face, but since he was dressed in the standard attire and carried himself like he belonged in here, no one paid any attention to him as he headed into the Anbu cafeteria to eat before heading out the front door. He knew he would have to have a stern talk with Sarutobi for allowing this laxness in security to occur in their most secure institutions. Minato made it outside and began to wander the city, hoping to catch a glimpse of his son and introduce himself. It wasn't quite time to tell him everything, the boy would probably need a few days to get used to him before he invited him to live at the Namikaze estate, assuming it was also in one piece. He was quite surprised to see the city gearing up for a festival. There were games and food stands being set up along the main street of the village. The number of different games that included trying to hit a fox as the target gave him a good idea of what the festival was about. Perhaps, he thought, he could use this as an opportunity to show his son how to throw a kunai. He smiled happily behind his mask at the thought. In an instant, his smile had turned into a murderous scowl. He had seen a flash of bright blonde hair dash out of an alley, only to be struck by a kunai from a leaf Chunin and sent sprawling into the opposite alley which Minato knew to be a dead end. He chucked his three-pronged kunai into the air and used every ounce of his chakra to form a weak Rasengan before he disappeared in a flash. Return of the Hummingbird. Naruto huddled in his bed when he woke up. He knew what today was, it was his birthday. What was for most children a joyous occasion was for him a day marked with fear. "Wake up, narrator. It is time for your birthday present," came the sneering voice of one of the older boys. He did not want to get up. Whatever present they had for him was sure to be something he would not enjoy. He knew because he had 4 years of experience. On his first birthday, he had been dumped in a trash can that was too tall for him to climb out of. He had been forced to eat the garbage that had been dumped on him, or nothing at all. At the end of that day, he had been taken out and beaten for getting himself so dirty. On his second birthday, the orphanage staff had provided a pinata for the children in the form of Naruto hog-teat and hung from the ceiling. They had given the other children candy, the harder they hit him, the more they got. On his third birthday, they had started a new tradition. Instead of setting up something themselves, they simply offered rewards to the child who made him cry the most. This year would be no different than the past two. His thin, ratty sheet was yanked off of his head and he was left shivering in his one and only set of third-time hand-me-down clothes, which had more holes than fabric. He tried to run, but was grabbed by the other children and his hands and feet were tied to the bedposts. "It's time for breakfast, birthday boy." This was the one child that Naruto feared above all the others. He was one of the oldest ones left at the orphanage and Naruto understood why. No one would want this boy as their son. While most of the orphans were skinny from lack of food, this boy was as big as any other two children put together. He had started a system where the other children had to bring him a part of their meal every night or they would be beaten up. Once Naruto had come around, he had made it his mission to sit beside him every day and take whatever small portion of meat or dessert might have been afforded to him. Naruto had always been too small and weak to do anything about it. "Now open wide," the boy said as he pulled a large jar out of a box and held it in front of Naruto's face. It was full of beetles and bugs and grubs, things that no one but the most desperate would eat of their own free will. "I do hope that none of them are too poisonous." The boy laughed cruelly. Naruto tried to resist. He clamped his mouth closed, but then they just started shoving the insects up his nostrils so that he was forced to open his mouth to breathe, then handfuls of them were shoved down his throat. Everyone else laughed while Naruto choked on the disgusting creatures. When the jar was empty, his tormentors were not finished. "I guess all that food made him thirsty," one said. Then, they took turns peeing on him while he cried for them to stop. "Let's go before the narrator's stink rubs off on us." The boys left him, lying in the puddle of piss on his bed. It was hours before he could wriggle free and by that time, the puddle had become cold and clammy, making him shiver. Naruto snuck out of the orphanage before anything else could happen to him and made his way into the forest at the edge of the populated area of Konoha. Luckily, being an orphanage, they could not afford prime real estate and were only a few blocks away. He did not want to even try to pass through the town today. He had learned that lesson on his third birthday when the Hokage himself had to take him to the hospital and force them to treat his wounds. He made his way to a stream he knew and jumped in, rolling around and allowing the cold water to wash away his defilement the best he could. He could never understand why the adults treated him so much different than the other kids. It wasn't fair. When he felt so numb from the cold that he could no longer move his fingers, Naruto climbed out of the stream and lay on the bank, allowing the sun to dry him off. He still smelled kind of like stale piss, but he knew that he could do no better without some soap. As he lay there, he was startled by a curse as a kunai slammed into the ground inches from his head. Then, Naruto ran for his life. He ran right into the village in the midst of preparing for the Kyuubi festival. Then, things got worse as drunkards and even normal civilians joined the chase. Just as he was beginning to hope that he could outlast them, a kunai lodged itself into his back and he was sent sprawling into another alley. To make things worse, this alley had no way out. "Stupid demon, should never have shown your face, now I am going to cut it off," the Chunin said, much to the glee of the crowd that had gathered, blocking all hope of escape. Naruto closed his eyes and waited for the pain to come. And the pain did come. There was a thunk and then some screams, but they did not come from him. When he cracked his eyes open, he saw a bloodbath. Not only the Chunin, but every person who had cheered for his death had been torn apart. Most were dead of kunai slashing and piercing their bodies, but the Chunin was the worst. It was as if his head had been disintegrated and splattered across the alley. There was blood everywhere. The only person left standing was a lone Anbu who was wearing a mask he had never seen before. His hands and mask showed splatters of blood radiating across them. When the Anbu turned towards him, Naruto cringed, thinking that he would be next. He stared in terror as the man reached for him. He closed his eyes in fear once again, wondering whether the man was going to strangle him or break his neck. Then he felt arms wrap around him. Perhaps the man intended to squeeze him like a bear until he snapped in half. No, he wasn't doing anything like that. The man was merely holding Naruto tight to his chest. Naruto had seen this happen to other children before, but it was the first time he had experienced it himself. "Naruto, this is going to hurt a bit." Naruto tensed. He knew it had been too good to be true. The man had just been lulling him into a false sense of security. Once again, it was not what he had expected. The man merely plucked the kunai from the back of his shoulder and dropped it onto the ground, then took some bandages out of his leg pouch to wrap the wound. "There, that's better. Now, let's get you home." "No please, don't take me back there today," Naruto whimpered. "Naruto, where have you been living until now?" Naruto heard an edge of anger in the man's voice, and this tone usually meant that he was going to get hurt if he didn't obey. "The orphanage," he replied. "Naruto, when I say I am taking you home, I mean our home. You are never going to an orphanage again if I have anything to say about it. I will not let another person do these cruel things to you." Naruto was scared. Usually when people were nice to him, it was a trick. Chapter 2. Living Arrangements. There was a flash of light in the street, but no one really paid attention. The civilians knew that this sort of thing was a ninja matter, and hadn't a ninja just been where the flash had come from? For some of them, they viewed the flash with nostalgia. Surely it was only a flash grenade or a specialized shunshin, but it vaguely reminded them of the fourth Hokage's Hiraishin technique. For Minato, the effect was much more immediately concerning. He had felt the pull of the seal as it moved, and with a fancy application of chakra, the world split for a fraction of a second as he was in two places at once before the sub-dimensional rift stabilized, creating a burst of photons as it collapsed behind him. His eyes fell immediately upon the Chunin whose kunai was raised above the cowering Naruto's head. Minato did not even pause to think about his actions as he slammed his partially formed Rasengan into the man's face, slamming him down into the ground where his face was shredded by the grinding chakra, collapsing the man's skull and liquefying his brain. He was suddenly feeling very drained, but he could not let that slow him down when his son was in danger. Since his chakra reserves were running on less than fumes, he grabbed a kunai from his pouch, he decapitated two men and sliced the neck of the third, sending fountains of blood across the alley. He moved with speeds that the remaining civilians could not even hope to see, since that was the strength of his taijutsu. The Hummingbird style was of Minato's own creation. It had incredible power and speed, but lacked precision, which meant that the aftermath of his matches were sprays of blood as he literally disarmed his opponents the hard way. In seconds it was over and only two living beings were left in the alley. He turned to face his son, his steps shuffling from exhaustion and his vision blurring. He could not believe that such a light exertion could take so much out of him. He took a tentative step towards Naruto, reaching for him, longing to hold his son for the second time. It seemed like yesterday to him that Naruto had been a fresh babe, still wet from the birthing. Now, he was an abused young boy who had grown without the love that should rightfully be due to him. Minato stumbled, falling to a knee, but that was okay. He wrapped his arms around Naruto, carefully avoiding the protruding kunai as he pulled the boy into his chest. He knew he had to do something about that, and he feared for what would happen if he took Naruto to the hospital. "This is going to hurt a bit," Minato said, cringing as he felt Naruto cringe away from him in fear. With a quick deft movement, Minato pulled the kunai out without causing any additional damage. His Anbu field kit included a roll of bandages which he wrapped around Naruto's chest under his shirt. "There, that's better," he told his son reassuringly, "now, let's get you home." Minato's anger returned, burning cold in the pit of his belly as he saw Naruto's fear of the words. "No," the boy begged, "please, don't take me back there today." Minato could only imagine the terrors the boy had suffered because of what had been sealed inside him, but to be afraid of returning home on his birthday was too wrong. If at no other time in the year, this was the one day that Naruto should celebrate, but instead the day seemed to be his idea of a nightmare. Naruto, Minato Namek is ground out, trying to sound happy but failing, where have you been living until now? The orphanage, he replied meekly, and by this reply, Minato knew that Naruto thought he was mad at him. Naruto, when I say I am taking you home, I mean our home. You are never going to an orphanage again if I have anything to say about it. I will not let another person do these cruel things to you. Minato was unsurprised when Naruto seemed to take no comfort at the words. People had probably tried to lead him into any number of traps with promises of freedom from his suffering. Before that though, I think you should go talk to the Hokage. You know he is a good man, right? Naruto nodded. He doesn't hate you or hurt you, does he? Naruto shook his head. Good. Then take this, Minato said, handing his three-pronged Hiraishin kunai to Naruto. If anyone tries to hurt you, then throw this at them. If it is at all possible, then I will help you, but I am not feeling too well right now and don't know how useful I would be, so don't use it unless you really need it. Naruto took the kunai without saying anything, looking puzzled and still wary. When you see the Hokage, tell him this, the hummingbird is awoken after the long night. It has left its nest to see the great tree in bloom, but the nectar of its flowers is bitter. Can you remember that? It took several tries before Naruto could remember the message, and Minato had almost begun to wonder about head injuries Naruto may have received as a baby. In the end, Naruto could parrot back the phrase. There is no need to hide anything that happened here. You won't get into trouble. But, if the third Hokage doesn't believe you at first, just show him the kunai I gave you. That will definitely convince him. But that last piece of advice, Naruto ran off towards the Hokage tower. Return of the Hummingbird. Hiruzen Sarutobi could only sigh wearily as the dog mask Anbu reported that he had been only 3 hours late for duty, but Naruto had been nowhere to be found. If the man were not one of the few he could trust to protect Naruto, he would have had him sent back to the academy for the tardiness, especially on this day. Then, his worries were calmed as he heard Naruto's voice. Let me past, ugly bitch, I need to see the old man. The tenaciousness of the boy never ceased to amuse him, and he chuckled at the nickname his secretary had acquired. She definitely deserved it, but she was very good at her job. Hokage Dono is in a meeting and is not to be disturbed. The woman's voice was cold and professional. Kakashi, the third Hokage said, please let your charge in and try not to lose him again. As you wish, Hokage-sama, the silver-haired one-eyed man opened the door just as Naruto was rushing headlong towards it in hopes of bypassing the secretary. Having expected to hit the door and barrel through it, Naruto was not expecting to meet no resistance at all. With nothing to stop his forward charge, his balance shifted much too far forward and he stumbled. He windmilled his arms in an attempt to right himself, but it was too little and too late. He went flying forward and slammed face first into the heavy wooden desk. Ow, 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 ow. Naruto rolled around on the floor, clutching his head in pain as the adult smirked at his clumsiness. Then, realizing that he was in fact inside the office of the Hokage, he stopped and turned to the office's owner and began to babble at an almost incoherent rate. The other boys tied me to my bed and made me eat bugs and peed on me, and when I got out and cleaned up in the stream in the forest I took a nap, but a Chunin found me and threw kunai at me while he chased me, and then a whole bunch of people were chasing me, and then the Chunin hit me with a kunai, and I fell, and he was about to kill me, when an Anbu appeared and killed all the people chasing me and he said he wouldn't let anyone hurt me, and he said to tell you that the hummingbird woke up after a long night and left his nest to see the great tree blooming, but that the nectar was sour and to show you this. Naruto pulled out the kunai that the man had given him and held it up, gasping for breath. Minato-sensei. The dog-masked Anbu gasped when he saw the three-pronged kunai. Hiruzen Sarutobi remained silent, his blood chilled at the thought of what his dead successor would think if he knew how the village had treated his son. Naruto, the Hokage said, wait here for me, Kakashi, follow me. With that, he opened the hidden door to the spiral marble staircase. Naruto sat on a couch that resided at the side of the office and lay down, examining the kunai he held with great interest. Return of the Hummingbird. Minato had been sitting in the filth of the alley for several minutes, but his stamina had not returned at all. Even if he had achieved minor chakra exhaustion, he should have had enough energy to move on his own. Still, not an ounce of chakra had returned, and if that was truly the case he would never be strong enough to succeed in any drawn-out battle, let alone return to his position as the fourth Hokage. The best he could hope for would be to protect Naruto in his times of greatest need until his son was strong enough to protect himself with his own strength. But, even for that meager goal, he would need chakra. Minato guiltily thought of one way to accomplish this. While he always intended to train Naruto and help him become a powerful ninja, now he was thinking that the first technique he would need to teach the boy was the chakra battery, which could be used to transfer chakra from one person to another, though half was wasted as the donor's chakra had to convert itself to be compatible with the receiver's. Maybe the legendary healer Tsunade of the Sannin might be able to restore his ability to create chakra if she could be found. Until then, he had only one option. He reached into his ninja tool pouch and pulled out a small brown pill which he popped into his mouth. The results were less than impressive. Considering the extreme stamina and chakra reserves that he had held within him before fighting the Kyuubi, he should have had the equivalent of a high Jounin's level of chakra added to his reserves. However, he had only received, at most, as much as a mid-level genin. If he was lucky, he might be able to perform a single Rasengan before he collapsed from exhaustion. But at least it was enough to get him mobile again. He traveled across town towards the location of the Namika's compound. Well, compound was a bit of a stretch. It had been a nice house with plenty of room for him, Kushina, and a child with a decent yard for him to play and train in. But when he arrived, there was no trace of his house. Instead, what had once been a nice neighborhood was now a slum with towering apartment buildings for the lower-class peoples in Konoha. As Minato stared at the location that was once his house, he wondered for a moment what had happened to the rest of his possessions. His next stop was the ninja bank. It was still, thankfully, in one piece and just as prosperous as when he had left. He got in line behind a bear mask Anbu and, after 10 minutes of tedious waiting, was greeted by the smiling face of a young female bank teller. "How may we help you today?" she asked with a smile. "I have been in a long-term coma and have recently woken. Could you please get me a list of account activities for the past 5 years? Sir, your account will have entered an inactive status if it has been that long since you accessed it. Please reactivate it then. I believe I left a blood sample for identification of myself, or should I die, any biological heir. But, considering that my son has been living in an orphanage, I doubt that he even knew that there was money here that he could have had access to." Silently, he added to himself, "Not that the bank would have allowed him access if what I have seen of his treatment is as widespread as I fear. Very well, it might take an hour or two to complete the tests and gather the records." The woman reached below the counter and retrieved a thick piece of chakra-laced paper. "If you would please write down your account number and add a drop of blood to this sheet, I will get to your request immediately." Return of the Hummingbird. "It's true," Sarutobi said worriedly. "How can this be possible? He was dead." "You checked him yourself," Kakashi Haddock said ominously. "Something must have happened during the sealing. Minato was the only one to ever use this jutsu, so we can't be too sure of the effects or if something did not go as expected. For all we know, he could have annoyed the Shinigami to the point that he sent the man back just to be rid of him." Despite his pondering, Sarutobi could think of no truly reasonable explanations. Even the forbidden Edo Tensei jutsu would not affect the original body, and there was no indication of anyone breaking into this chamber, which was known only by the Hokage and now the Anbu captain Kakashi Haddock. "Then, why didn't he come to us first?" "I was his student and you are the Hokage," Kakashi asked, feeling slightly betrayed. Maybe something is wrong, or maybe he just doesn't want people to know he's back until he is ready. How many people would know the meaning of that riddle Naruto repeated? How many people knew that Hummingbird was the fourth Hokage? My team knew, but only his commander and you were ever told his true identity, and that man died during the Kyuubi attack. Kakashi, do you know who Naruto's parents are? Surely you've seen the resemblance. I thought he was just an orphan whose parents died during the Kyuubi attack." Kakashi's stomach felt like a lead weight in his gut. "You can't see it, can you? Or is it that you won't see it?" "See what?" Kakashi asked nervously. "Naruto's parents' identities are an S-class secret. His mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the survivor of Whirlpool and the previous host to the Kyuubi." Kakashi's breath paused in suspense. It was so obvious that he couldn't believe he had not seen it before. The brat was just like his mother. He had her fire and spirit. He had her love for Raymond. He had her burden as well. But if Kushina was his mother, then he could only come to one conclusion. Minato-sensei was his father, he said under his breath, but the old man still heard him. It all made sense when he thought of it. The endless stamina and fierce resolve and, most of all, his shining golden locks and piercing blue eyes were a mirror of his father's. He suddenly felt extremely guilty for not doing anything before to relieve the young boy's hellhole of a life. At the very least, he could have given the kid some food when he was hungry or given him a safe place to stay. He wondered what his teacher would think of him now. He was fairly sure that he would soon find out. "Kakashi, as of now, you're retired from Anbu and will be returning to Jounin status," Sarutobi said. But Kakashi wondered if this was his punishment for being late again. "Until he is ready to reveal himself, I want you to follow Naruto and pass messages between Minato and me. You are not to reveal who he is, not even to Naruto unless his father tells him first. I have already arranged a new home for Naruto. It is not big or fancy, but it should not draw too much attention." Return of the Hummingbird. The teller returned in flushed embarrassment not long after going on the search for records. "I am terribly sorry, sir, but there seems to be a mistake and I cannot access your account." "My blood matched the blood on file, didn't it?" Minato asked. "It did," the woman confirmed. "Then, what reason could there possibly be to withhold my money from me?" He unleashed a small sliver of killing intent and everyone turned to listen. The girl trembled as she spoke. "We were informed that you died in the Kyuubi attack and that you had no relatives to inherit the money, so your funds were appropriated by the bank in order to cover reconstruction costs." The shinobi, hearing this proclamation, immediately began clamoring to close their accounts and have their money removed to their own safekeeping. Many of the higher-level ninja had no family and the Anbu were often temporarily declared dead or rogue when on the most secret of assignments, which could even last for years. To make it worse, to hear that upon proof of identity, they would not be able to retrieve their money after such a mission made them question the validity and standing of the bank. Their funds management would be safer hidden in their mattress than in this den of thieves. It would not be long before every shinobi heard about this outrageous treatment. Eventually, the bank manager entered the chaos and immediately demanded to know the reason behind the commotion. "Please calm down, everyone. I assure you that your money is safe and is not going to be appropriated unjustly. We have procedures to follow in this situation. We will, of course, examine the financial records of the account in question and restore the appropriated money with interest for any delay, treating it like any loan that we would give out. We just need to work out a payment plan with our dear friend Hummingbird here, then we will of course return his money at the earliest possible convenience." While the manager's words calmed the crowd somewhat, many had already decided that it would be best to diversify. After all, the civilian banks provided better interest rates, though at the cost of lower security. "Thank you for your assistance. I assume you will be taking care of this personally." Minato grinned triumphantly behind his mask. "Of course, I could do no less for a valued customer such as yourself. And, miss, I would also like to have my son added to the account as soon as it is restored. You are able to handle that." Minato offered up the kunai which had been lodged in Naruto's back. The blood was still fresh. "Of course. We are more than happy to serve all your needs." The woman took the kunai and headed off to start the procedure before her boss realized how much of the bad publicity was her fault. "Please follow me to my office and I will make sure that this little misunderstanding is taken care of." Chapter 3. Strong fiscal policy. "Naruto, did you make plans to meet with Hummingbird after coming here?" The question stumped Naruto. He was sure the man said that he had wanted Naruto to come home with him, which Naruto now thought meant that the man wanted to adopt him. The problem was that the masked man had never mentioned where he lived, what his name was, or anything else personally identifiable beyond the riddle he'd repeated to the Hokage. "No, he didn't tell me where he lived or anything. He said he would take me home so I wouldn't have to go back to the orphanage, but he didn't say where." Naruto, Hummingbird has not been around the village for 5 years and probably didn't know that his home doesn't exist anymore. Sarutobi informed Naruto, causing the boy to be suddenly stricken with fear to such a degree that Sarutobi considered having Kakashi investigate the orphanage for child abuse, even if the council would never let him close it down if the only offenses were against Naruto. "I am not going back to the orphanage," Naruto insisted. "I'll sleep in the forest if I have to. Or, maybe I can find a nice cave." "That won't be necessary. I have arranged for an apartment for the two of you to stay in. It is not very big, but with a little cleaning, it should be a comfortable place for you both to stay. I'm going to send a good friend of Hummingbird with you and a squad of Anbu to clear up the dead bodies. If he doesn't show up, he will show you where the apartment is and you can get settled in until you find Hummingbird again." Naruto nodded in acknowledgement. "Sure, old man. It's about time I got a new place. The orphanage was totally cramping my style." He smiled brightly, ecstatic about moving out of the hellish place he had called home that morning. "I suppose that it is my turn to introduce myself," Kakashi announced lazily as he entered the room. He passed his dog mask to the Hokage and crouched down in front on the blonde boy. "My name is Kakashi Haddock. I'll be hanging out with you and Hummingbird a lot, so I hope we can be good friends." He smiled in a friendly manner to reduce the nervousness the boy might have at meeting a new person, though the gesture was mostly hidden by his face mask and his hit eye, which covered one of his eyes. The only indication of the smile was the genial arc of his one visible eye. Naruto looked at Kakashi for a minute, then brazenly asked, "Yo, Cyclops, what's up with your eye?" Kakashi resisted the urge to smack the kid for being rude and instead ruffled his hair roughly, causing Naruto to squirm in discomfort. A small altercation with some Iowa shinobi got a little out of hand. "Would you like a personal demonstration?" The smile never left Kakashi's face as he pulled out a kunai, so fast that Naruto did not even see it, and began tapping the flat of the blade against Naruto's nose. Naruto was seriously considering throwing the kunai he had received. "No, I'll take your word on it." Naruto squirmed out from Kakashi's hand and hid behind the leg of the Hokage. It would have been funny to the adults had they not known that this instinct had saved the boy's life on more than one occasion. "Well, here are the keys to your new apartment. Hummingbird will have to get a copy made or share with you. The address is written on the tag so that you can ask for directions if you get lost. Thanks, Jai-san." Naruto took the keys and held on to them, since his pockets were filled more with holes than anything else. "Well, it's time to go then." Before Naruto could say anything else, he was flying up into the air with a surprised squeal before landing lightly straddled behind Kakashi's head. Hold on tight. Kakashi then leapt out the window, much to Naruto's fear and delight. Return of the Hummingbird. Well, sir, as you can see, our records indicate that you had a good deal of money saved up. Not a fortune, but enough that it will take a week or two to find the money. I know how much money I had, Minato sighed. After waiting for 20 minutes, the bank manager had felt obligated to bore him with a Ryo by Ryo accounting of every coin that had left his possession. We already established that my account will be refunded. Why don't we discuss the payment plan? Of course, but until the payments begin, you will probably be a little short on cash. A short-term loan could be beneficial to you. Minato sighed. This was draining him worse than the fighting. All he wanted to do was find Naruto and learn about the last 5 years of his life. Let me make this simple. You borrowed 290,000 Ryo from me. At 5% interest compounded monthly, as are your own rates, you currently owe me 372,000 Ryo, give or take a few hundred. So, if you pay out 1,500 bi-weekly, we should be even in about 13 years. I'll be back for my first payment tomorrow. I am sure you'll have it all set up by then. Minato stood up, preparing to leave. Wait. The bank manager was busy typing numbers into a mechanical adding machine to verify the numbers Minato had given and found them to be more or less accurate. There is no way that you could calculate that in your head. The bank manager was now glaring at him suspiciously. You can't be any good at seals without decent math skills, Minato explained irritably. And, if you were Jiraiya of the Sannin, I might believe that excuse, but you are just some no-name manbu who thinks he can bully the shinobi bank. We will not stand for. He was silenced by a kunai resting against his throat. Under the economic charter signed into law by the second Hokage, I will hereby execute you for treason against Konoha, grand theft, and extortion. Do you have anything to say before you pay for your crimes? What I meant to say was that we will happily agree to these arrangements and look forward to your continued patronage. With that, Minato thanked the man and stepped out, glad that the bank manager was so incompetent. After all, the law he had threatened the man with did not exist. While there were legal remedies, fear and public perception could be much more powerful when dealing with someone who cared only for money. Even if they had chosen the legal resolution, there were more lawyers than Ninja in Konoha, and the bank manager could afford the best. Now, he only wanted to find Naruto and take him camping until he got a new place. Return of the Hummingbird. Naruto examined the alleyway carefully. It was amazing how fast and how thoroughly it had been cleaned up. There was no trace of the massacre that had occurred just an hour before. It was like it had never even happened. The man in the dog mask was watching him as he scuttled around looking for the evidence of what he knew had been here. You won't find anything, Kakashi told him, my Anbu are very good at their jobs. It's impossible. Naruto complained, there's no way this could be cleaned up so fast. I never said it was all cleaned up. Kakashi said enigmatically, looking at things that Naruto could not see. Naruto sighed. Waiting was boring. There was nothing to do but wait, and they'd been doing that for at least 5 minutes now. He glanced over at Kakashi, who seemed to be busy reading some orange book. He began moving slowly towards the mouth of the alley. Perhaps he could find one of the people who usually insulted him and pull some sort of revenge prank while waiting. If nothing else, the ensuing chase would keep him occupied for a few minutes. Don't even think about it, Kakashi said without looking up from his book. Think about what? Naruto asked, looking away and scuffing the ground with his foot. I've watched over you plenty of times. I know how you think. If you're that bored, then try and hit me. I'm warning you, though, you're not going to even have a chance if you don't come at me with the intent to kill. You're not so great. Just you watch and I'll show you why I am going to be Hokage one day. With that, Naruto charged forward. Halfway to Kakashi, he slipped on something and fell to the ground, crying out as he hit the pavement. Hey. No fair, you tripped me. Kakashi sighed, I haven't even moved. But I will admit that I was wrong. Naruto raised his fist angrily and was about to shout at Kakashi when he noticed that his arm was covered in blood. Then he noticed that it wasn't just his arm, but half his body was dripping with thick red blood. Then he screamed, just as Hummingbird arrived. Before Kakashi could blink, he had a kunai at his throat. Give me one good reason that I shouldn't kill you where you stand. Because it's not his blood, Kakashi replied, calmly putting his book back in the pocket of his vest. It's not? Naruto asked, instantly quieting his scream. No, you slipped in a pool of blood. After everyone goes home for the night, a squad will remove the Jinjutsu on the area and clear the alley with some low-power suit Ninjutsus. Naruto wiped the blood from his hands onto his pants. You were rubbing it, just spread the blood around. So, Kakashi-kun, I suppose Sarutobi sent you to be my messenger pigeon? Hummingbird asked. I prefer the term bodyguard, or at least assistant. Until this afternoon, I was the Anbu captain, Kakashi sighed. I don't suppose we could crash with you tonight. It seems my old house no longer exists and I won't have access to any money until tomorrow. No need. Naruto grinned triumphantly, I got us covered. After the incidents at the orphanage, Hokage-sama decided it might be safer for Naruto to live on his own than at the orphanage. Which orphanage exactly? Minato asked, twirling his kunai nonchalantly in his hand. One that you're never going to learn the name of for the sake of the kid still living there, Kakashi said, knowing that giving away the location would likely end up with several orphanage workers dead. Well, I guess we should go see this apartment then. Besides, someone needs a bath. Return of the Hummingbird. Finding the apartment had been easy, it was right where his old house had been. It wasn't very classy and there wasn't much room, but it was furnished and the appliances worked fairly well with a few adjustments like fixing the knife-shaped hole in the gas line. Minato expected that the owner of the building was hoping to get rid of the demon brat and get some nice insurance money out of the bargain as well. He was definitely going to have a brief chat with the owner the instant he met the man. For now, he was alone with Kakashi and had a very sensitive issue to discuss. Kakashi, you wouldn't happen to know the chakra battery jutsu, would you? I do, though I am not very good at it. I didn't copy it from the best medic nin in the world. Then I have to ask you to practice a lot. I may be needing the jutsu every day. Why not just use soldier pills? When I woke up, I was running on fumes. After a Hiraishin and a half-formed Rasengan, I was just about to collapse, so I used an extra strength Anbu soldier pill. It only restored a weak genin level amount of chakra and that has quickly been disappearing. My body doesn't seem to be able to generate chakra anymore and I doubt that anyone short of Tsunade would have a chance of fixing me. That's probably not going to happen anytime soon. She hasn't been back to the village since the night you died, Kakashi explained. Well, let's see if the technique will actually work better than the solder pill. He knew that the chakra battery had just as much chance of causing harmful side effects as relying on soldier pills did, though he hoped that alternating them until he could find out what was really wrong with him would at least let him remain capable of helping Naruto. Kakashi performed some hand signs and his hands began to radiate blue chakra. He placed his hands on Minato's chest and allowed the waves of chakra to enter the other man's system, but it was not working very well. It was as if his chakra circulatory system just wasn't flowing at all. After a few minutes of forcing chakra into his teacher's system, Kakashi had to stop. If I do any more, I'll be the one needing a chakra boost, Kakashi said, collapsing onto the uncomfortably lumpy couch. Well, you beat the soldier pill. If I am careful and don't get into any fights, I should be able to last a couple weeks with this. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble, Naruto said, surprising Kakashi and Minato who hadn't even noticed him return from the shower. You're still all wet and naked, Minato pointed out awkwardly as Kakashi turned his head away. I can't find any towels and my clothes are still covered in blood, Naruto stated as if the adults were stupid for not knowing. Well, this is awkward, Kakashi said after a minute. Do you think you can get him something to wear? Even a shirt of yours would be plenty big enough. I'll wash it and give it back tomorrow after I get some money and go shopping, Minato requested. It will take me a minute. I don't have the chakra to Shunshin at the moment. Thank you. I'll just talk to Naruto while we wait. I still have my requests to the third to detail after this. Kakashi nodded and left. So, Naruto, do you have any questions for me? Naruto sat pondering silently for only a moment before answering, you've done a lot for me already. I don't want to bother you. His eyes squeezed shut tightly for a moment before looking up at the hummingbird mask. Naruto, did people hurt you because you asked questions? Minato's finger stroked his kunai pouch, causing Naruto to drop to the floor and cover his head. Naruto. Minato leapt across the room towards his son to comfort him, but Naruto shied away. I didn't get anything I didn't deserve. I'm just an orphan. I was stupid enough not to have parents so I'm stupid enough not to have answers, Naruto began to mumble over and over. This mantra usually kept the beatings short. You are not an orphan, Naruto, not anymore. You have me now, you have a father. Minato gently gathered the poor kid to himself and held him. He just looked too pitiful, naked, shivering and crying in fear. Minato swore to himself that he would find the people responsible for causing this and beat some morals into them. I told you already, I am not going to let anyone hurt you if I can stop it and I can stop it. Naruto soon calmed down but didn't make a move to leave his father's arms. Kakashi returned with a towel, some blankets and a large blue shirt which was more than big enough to act as a nightgown for Naruto. Is this a permanent assignment or just for tonight? Minato asked Kakashi. Until you're ready to reveal your identity to the village. Take as long as you need though, I bet you wouldn't mind some help training the little guy, Kakashi offered. About that, is Tsunade still around? She's still alive, if that's what you mean. She hasn't been back to the village since that night, she refuses to come back for anything. Tell the old man to recall her. In my condition I am not even fit to help with his paperwork. I can't reveal myself until I get better or Naruto becomes strong enough to take on the Iwa assassins that would surely be sent if they knew who we really were. Return of the Hummingbird. The next day, Minato left Kakashi in charge of Naruto and returned to the bank, asking to meet with the manager. The man's elegant suit did not make his disgruntled glare any more inviting when Minato entered the office. "Do you have my first payment ready?" Minato asked, ignoring the steely gaze of the man. "Which law was it exactly, the one you intended to execute me for breaking?" The man pressed his fingers together and leveled his gaze at the hummingbird mask sitting at the opposite side of his desk. "Grand theft. Failing to execute the will of the deceased ninja," Minato suggested, knowing that the man had tried to look up the law overnight. "The first of which results in a prison term and the second of which results in a fine if convicted, which my lawyers assure I would not be. And, avoiding lawyers is precisely the reason that I avoided real laws in the first place. As Inara would say, they are just too troublesome," Minato sighed, "but what you fail to understand is that you did not steal from an individual. You stole funds that rightfully belong to a clan. That means that you are not eligible for public justice under the Clan Rights Act passed by the first Hokage. You would be judged and sentenced by the clan's justice. Since there are now only 2 surviving members of the clan and one is a minor, that means that I am your judge, jury and executioner if need be. I was hoping I did not have to bring this up because I don't want people to know I am back yet and it gives away too much information about me. 2 members. Does that mean you will be invoking the clan restoration clause?" The man asked with a greedy glint in his eyes. "I loved my wife. If I find love again I may consider remarriage, but I am not the kind of man who would consider something as political or perverted as what you are considering. If my son chooses to invoke the clause when he comes of age, that is his own choice." The bank manager sighed this time. Clans received many benefits under the law and getting a family member married into a clan was a very good connection to have. The clan restoration clause allowed a clan with less than 8 members to allow one of their members to take additional wives in order to raise more children and create political alliances. These marriages occasionally occurred without the consent of the woman to be wed, which often caused some tension between the clan and the normal civilians of the village. To his knowledge, none of the resident clans had ever taken advantage of the clause, using it instead as an enticement to acquire new bloodlines from other villages. "So, do you have the first payment? I will take that one in cash. Further payments can be made into my account until the debt has been paid and I shall access it as a normal customer." "How can I be sure you're from a clan if you don't reveal your identity?" asked the Hokage. "I am sure he will back up my claims when you tell him it was Hummingbird. Or, you can ask the son of the White Fang. He also knows of my identity. Or I could ask a Hyuga to look past your mask for me," the bank manager countered stubbornly. "And what Hyuga could you convince to commit treason against the village? They may be stuck-up assholes, but they are loyal. How could revealing an identity be treason? You could be a spy or an assassin or just using a jutsu to claim you are owed money. If I am a spy, what if I am spying for the Hokage and my identity is an important part of my duties? Perhaps I was on a mission which the village cannot be associated without causing a war. Perhaps my identity relates to some village secret so classified that speaking of it to the wrong person could result in your execution. Perhaps it is another reason. I am not going to tell you, but I will say that the Hokage will back me and standing in my way is not smart. Here's your money," the bank manager grumbled, taking a stack of bills from his drawer, "but know this, if the Hokage does not back your story, you will be killed." Minato took the money, "Thank you. I hope we do not have any more problems." Chapter 4. Play dates. Minato grumbled to himself as he walked the streets. The bank manager had been way too troublesome. If only his chakra was working properly, then Minato would have hopped right back into the Hokage seat and things would have run smoothly. He stopped at a shinobi supply store that he used to frequent. This would completely blow his cover, but he had trusted the owner of the shop. He walked in and saw a familiar face working the cash, while a little girl who seemed to be about Naruto's age sat on the counter swinging around a bamboo sword. He sighed in relief knowing that his old friend was still in charge. "Hello, I'd like to make a special order," Minato said with a nod to the man behind the counter. "Of course, though you know that any custom equipment will come at an additional fee." The man had burly arms, as expected of a weaponsmith. He had dark brown hair that was tied back with a bandana and a full but smartly trimmed beard. He lay a beefy palm on his daughter's head. "We'd be happy to help you with anything you need. What I need most is secrecy," Minato said seriously, "Hokage's or Kakashi's ears only." "Sounds like a big order. Nothing you haven't done before. I need 30 custom kunai, type 37 with inscribed handles. I am sure you know what I am talking about." The smith's eyes widened, then he said, "Just let me." The next moment, he was over the counter with a sword in hand. "Get you to explain why I shouldn't kill you where you stand. Because I'd give you a matching scar on your right knee," Minato replied. "You sneaky bastard, you're supposed to be dead." The smith exclaimed. "Yeah, about that, I got a bit better." Minato laughed and scratched the back of his head. "They're not for me though. After being dead for 5 years, I'm not exactly in fighting condition. I'm going to start training my boy and with any luck he'll have the move down before he gets chunin. Speaking of which, I'll need some training kunai and shuriken, some paper, sealing ink, brushes, and the kid will need some new clothes as well. I guess he wasn't doing too well for himself with you out of the picture, the smith said, wiping his hands on his greasy leather apron. No, but growing up as an orphan, you can't expect much, even if he is my kid. Speaking of kids I'm responsible for, you have any idea what happened to the kid I sealed the Kyuubi into? Minato asked slyly. No, but I've heard he has it pretty rough. An Anbu came in the other day complaining that it was the third time this week he had to save the kid from a drunken villager. Heard some nasty stories from other shopkeepers as well. They say he's a thief and causes trouble. I don't know myself, I've never met the kid. Store is shinobi only, so he would never have gotten past the door, regardless of who he was. Think your girl would object to hanging out with him at my place or having him over here? I bet she already knows how to throw a kunai or two. Why don't you show him, sweetie? The smith asked. The girl smirked as she dropped the bamboo sword and hopped off the counter. She dug through the barrels of standard ninja supplies and came back with some kunai, shuriken and senbon. She stood in the middle of the floor and threw them each, one at a time, at the target marks on the back wall. Only one of the senbon missed. Every other projectile hit the target, with more than half hitting the red bull's eye. What's your name? Minato asked the girl. The girl ran to hide behind her father. This, here, is Tenten Hagane. I suspect she'll live up to her name in a few months, she's more of a 9 out of 10 girl right now. The elder Hagane chuckled at his own joke. So the so-called demon child is your offspring, huh? There's nothing demonic about him, except the way he's treated. Frankly, it makes me ashamed to have saved this village. You know what happened to him yesterday? He was attacked by a chunin of the leaf for sleeping out in the forest, chased through town by a mob, and stabbed with a kunai before I could save him. What kind of monsters can do that to a 5-year-old boy? The kind that can't tell the difference between a kunai and the scroll it is sealed in. You know, I wish there were more people as open-minded as you, Kurigane-san, Minato sighed, maybe my boy would have had an easier time of it. I know he will now with you looking out for him. One more thing. Minato put the last of his purchases on the counter. Anything for an old friend. I might need to pay in installments. Coming back from the dead caused a few issues at the bank. Perhaps we can work something out if you would be willing to take Tenten on Wednesday and Friday evenings. On Saturday mornings, he can come over here and I'll help him along with weapons training. Tenten could use a sparring partner her own size. Well, if you're doing the Kinjutsu, I'll do Taijutsu on Wednesdays and Fuinjutsu on Fridays. And maybe I can con Kakashi into doing ninjutsu staining once they learn to control chakra. And now that we have that worked out, I'd also like some chakra weights. You know how expensive those are. I am not sure I could part with a set of those even for you without cash up front. Kurigane Hagane said, but I do have a set of standard weights that should do the trick if you're willing to do the seal work yourself. Padded leather straps, reinforced with steel wire for strength. Comes with arms, legs and vest. Arms come with 5 5-pound bars and legs come with 7. Vest is not adjustable at 45 pounds. I wouldn't give him the vest until he can wear the arms at full weight. I'll keep that in mind, though if he's anything like his mother, you'd better start begging Ichiraku to give you a discount now, before Naruto gets old enough to really eat. Minato shuddered at the horror. If Kurigane was right, then he needed to negotiate a faster settlement with the bank or learn to make the stuff himself. Return of the Hummingbird. No, you need your legs at shoulder width in that stance to give you a proper balance and stability for when you punch. Kakashi had no idea how to deal with kids, so he stuck to what he knew. Good fundamentals, after all, would help the kid a great deal. Naruto was surprisingly obedient. He listened and learned quickly. He was already able to perform the first of the katas for the basic academy Taijutsu, and they had only been working on it for an hour. Kakashi had never even raised his voice once, which was troubling him. The kid hadn't even complained about him reading while he watched over the training. Good. Now keep doing that until you can take the stances perfectly without thinking about them. Kakashi was surprised at how much one word of praise brightened the boy's face. It was as if it was the first time he'd been praised for anything. Then, the door opened and a massive killer intent flooded the room. Kakashi-kun. What are you reading in front of my son? Kakashi stowed the book in his pocket. Was that one of Jiraiya-sensei's perverted books? Minato asked. Did you manage to find some decent clothes for Naruto? Kakashi asked, changing the subject abruptly for his own safety. Yeah, the Haganes are still running the best ninja supply store in town. He even agreed to help Naruto with his Kinjutsu if we help his daughter in the other aspects of her training. We? Kakashi asked, not liking where this was headed. Yes, we. Or is there something you'd rather be reading? Of course not. I am more than happy to help with training. I even taught Naruto the first set for the Academy Taijutsu. I assume you'll be teaching him your own style once he masters the basics. Of course, my son is going to be the best ninja in the world. Minato boasted, he's really focused isn't he? And very obedient. You should have seen how happy he looked when I said he did the stance good, Kakashi remarked. Return of the Hummingbird. Naruto was nervous. His new father had brought him to a weapons shop and headed around back where a burly man was helping a young girl to throw kunai correctly. Well, he felt comfortable enough around Hummingbird now, and Kakashi, this was a new and scary looking man. He had tried playing with other children before and the adults with them had always yelled and hit him and told him to stay away from their children. Kurigane-san. Hummingbird greeted, getting the man's attention. Good morning Hummingbird, the man replied jovially, why don't you come over and say hello, young man. Naruto twisted his little hands into the bottom edge of his new back shirt, which had an orange-red swirl on the chest and back. After a moment of nervous fiddling and a gentle shove from Hummingbird, Naruto stumbled forward until he stood in front of the young girl, or at least a half of her that wasn't hiding behind her father. Hi, he said. There was a few moments of awkward silence as the two children just looked at each other. My name's Naruto. What's yours? Tenten, the girl replied simply, but made no move to approach him. The adults watched, smirking as the two children stood nervously. Eventually, the shuffling and fidgeting ended as Naruto got bored and picked up one of the discarded training kunai, examining the dull blade. He had had plenty of experiences with kunai, none of them pleasant. But, he wanted to be a strong ninja like Hummingbird, which meant that he needed to learn to do more than just catch them with his body. He threw the weapon and it flew through the air for about 5 feet before it landed point first in the grass. You're doing it wrong, the young girl pointed out, you are supposed to hold it like this. She demonstrated the proper method of holding and throwing, hitting the wooden target dummy in the chest. Return of the Hummingbird. Any word on Tsunade? Minato asked. It had been close to 6 months since the Hokage sent a team in search of the medic. No, the team returned with no leads, and I doubt anyone short of Jiraiya will be able to track her down, and he only shows his face once or twice a year at most, Kakashi replied as they sat watching the children. After Tenten had begun training with them, word had gotten around that Kakashi had been doing pre-academy training for children. Many parents had come to see, and most of them left after seeing the primary student, but some had stayed. Shibi Abiram had naturally seen it as logical to both get the children used to his son's colony and to increase his abilities at the same time. But that, 2 children had become 3. The elder Abiram hadn't even bothered asking Kakashi to babysit, he had just showed up one day and dropped Shino off. That had been rather awkward for Kakashi. The week after that, Shikaku Nara had shown up with Shikamaru and thanked Kakashi for volunteering. The next week, Chaozu Akamichi had arrived with Shaoji and were followed soon after by Inoichi and Ino Yamanaka. This began the trouble. While Shikaku was too lazy to care and Chaozu really had no problem with the boy, Inoichi was very protective of his daughter. What is the demon boy doing here? Inoichi had asked, I don't want Ino getting involved with troublemakers. What demon boy? Kakashi had asked, feigning ignorance, I only ever volunteered to train the Uzumaki boy and the Hagin girl. If other people want to take advantage of my kindness, they should be happy to tolerate my real pupils. You know what's inside him, Inoichi continued to argue, not noticing the masked man who had appeared behind him. The genes of his mother and I and nothing else worth mentioning. Minato pressed a kunai to Inoichi's throat. You aren't the type to attack and spread rumors about innocent children, are you? I've heard stories about him. I just wanted to make sure my little girl is safe, Inoichi replied defensively. Then be at ease, she is as safe with my son as she would be with any other 6-year-old boy. If I were you, I'd be more worried about the Abiram boy. I have seen what happens if their hives get too agitated. The parents of other children had taken one look at Naruto and then taken their children straight home. One man was stupid enough to try and throw a rock at Naruto to chase him away. Minato had caught it and thrown it back, breaking the man's arm. News about that incident had gotten around quickly, and the next week, only Tsumin Yuzuka had shown up unexpectedly with her son Kiba. She had praised Hummingbird for protecting the pups from the asshole and entrusted Kiba to his care. The children quickly spilled the beans about their other training, and all 7 children were showing up at all of the thrice-weekly training sessions. Today, Kakashi had devised a game for them to play. All the children were to find a leaf and attach it to their forehead with chakra. Then, they were to try and steal the leaves attached to the other children's foreheads. They were to continue this until they were too tired to keep a leaf attached to their head or until it was time for lunch, which Chaoji's mother had taken to providing for the group. Kakashi had quickly learned that games like this kept the children focused on training, since not all of them enjoyed it as much as Naruto. The children's results were fairly similar, except for Naruto. Most of them could get one to attach now, but they would often fall off and they would have to stop and reattach them. Naruto, however, could not seem to get the exercise right since he had so much chakra. If he was distracted, even for a moment, the leaf would either shred itself under the pressure, fall off, or shoot off like a shuriken, leading to several close calls and the creation of his first original jutsu. Naruto was also wearing the weights all the time. He put them on in the morning and took them off at night. Neither Kakashi nor Minato actually knew how much he was wearing anymore. Since the boy had learned to manipulate chakra, he had been setting the weights himself. In the morning, he would set them to be heavy enough that he had a little trouble moving, but after running around all day, he would be moving as if he was not wearing any weights at all. He never ran out of stamina either. One day, Kakashi had joked that they should invite Midokai to train the kid. Minato had shot down the idea immediately. Chapter 5. For the love of Ramen, Dad. The 7-year-old Naruto snuggled up to his father on the couch. He was a lot more self-confident now that he was protected from attacks. But, even with his newfound confidence, he was very affectionate with those he was close to. He liked hugs and snuggling and receiving a lot of attention. This new attitude was much thanks to Kakashi's constant use of the chakra battery on Minato. He now had almost full chakra reserves, and Kakashi now had a much larger pool of chakra to use, and Minato did not have to worry about using a shunshin or two every once in a while, and was easily capable of handling anything the villagers would try. "What is it, Naruto?" the masked man replied. "Do you know who my real parents are?" "I've told you before, I am your real father," Minato replied. "Then why wouldn't you tell me your name, or about mom? You know how I am sick and I need Kakashi to help me with my chakra every day, right?" Minato asked, receiving a nod from his boy. "I have many enemies who think I am dead. If they knew I was alive and that I was your father, they would come to kill both of us and I wouldn't be strong enough to stop them," Minato explained. "But, why can't you tell me?" Naruto asked. "I wouldn't tell anyone." "Wouldn't you? Even if people were teasing you about how you were an orphan and you knew I was a super famous and unbelievably awesome ninja and that they would all think you were the greatest person in the world because you were my son." Maybe, Naruto mumbled, knowing that if this was true he would probably just run through the streets shouting it to everyone and rubbing it in their faces, or maybe even paint it across the Hokage monument. "Would you ever tell me who you are? If Tsunade returns someday and fixes me and you become a Chunin, then I'll tell you. Or, if you become a Jounin who is strong enough to take on a squad of Anbu without getting a single scratch. Until then, I am just Dad or Hummingbird. You promise that you'll tell me then?" Naruto asked. "I promise, for now. Why don't I tell you a little about your mother?" Minato pulled a small, faded picture out of his wallet. It showed a red-haired woman standing next to a younger version of Kakashi, another boy, and an Inyazuka. "This woman here is your mother. Her name is Kushina Uzumaki. She was born in the village hidden in the swirling tides, Uchiha, which used to be in the land of whirlpools." "What do you mean by used to be?" Naruto asked. "How did they move a whole village?" "They didn't," Minato explained solemnly. Uchiha was known for its people's long lives and their skills in Fuinjutsu. In the Second Great Ninja War, their skills were so feared that Awagakure and Kumagakure combined forces to destroy the village. Of the few survivors of the massacre, only one survived the war, and that was your mother, and that was because she had already been brought to Konoha to help us with something." "Why would Konoha need help from another village? I thought we were the strongest village." "We are, but that doesn't mean that we are the best at everything. For this task, your mother's bloodline made her better suited to the task than anyone in Konoha. And, because the first Hokage's wife was also in Uzumaki and the Senju clan was always close to the Uzumaki clan, we've always had good relations with Uzushio. So, if anyone tells you that you are unimportant because you were an orphan for a while, you can tell them that you're related to the first Hokage." Naruto smiled happily. It would be nice to shove that in the face of the stuck-up Hyuga clan or Uchiha clan. Now, where was I? Yes, so I knew Kushina since we were in the academy. We used to call her Tomato because her face would turn all red when she got mad, and with her hairstyle back then, she looked just like one. She was also called the red hot-blooded habanero because she had such a hot temper. When we were young, she never really paid attention to me, but I always loved looking at her red hair. I tried to ask her out, but she always thought I was too much of a wimp. There's no way she could think that. You're so strong, even while you're sick, that no one's been able to attack me in like forever." Naruto exclaimed a little too loudly, making Minato cover his ears. "Well, girls are weird and they don't always see things the same way guys do," Minato explained. He still didn't understand half the things women did, even with a sensei like the legendary pervert Jiraiya. Naruto agreed wholeheartedly, especially when it came to cool things like bugs. Tenten wasn't so bad, but Ino would always scream when one of Shino's bugs got in her hair. One time, Naruto had got Shino to cover him in bugs, and he had chased after Ino until she started crying. It was funny until he learned what a spanking was. Shino had also gotten a lecture on how dangerous it was to use his chakra-eating Kakachu in such numbers on a person who was not in tune with the hive. I eventually showed her how great I was. One day, she was captured by Kumonin. I was sent out as part of the team who was supposed to rescue her. Well, we searched, I find a trail of red hair and I knew it belonged to her, but my squad leader was an idiot and didn't believe me. I took off on my own, following the trail until I found them. I beat the Kumonin and saved your mother. When I told her that I found her because of how much I loved her hair, she became my girlfriend. What happened to the two of you? Naruto asked, why weren't you here before? You were born the night the Kyuubi attacked, Minato explained. Some things happened that night that I won't explain until you become a genin, but your mother died that night and people thought I was dead as well, but I was really just very sick and needed a long time to get better. Okay, Dad, I forgive you already. I know you would have been there for me if you could. Naruto gave his dad a reassuring hug. I'm just glad you're here now. A heavy knock and some muttering came from the door. Minato got up and used the peephole and saw a face with red lines painted below the eyes, a wild mane of white hair, and a hit I ate with the kanji for oil. He opened the door and beckoned the older man to enter, closing the door behind. So why did you need me exactly? The Hokage said that it was urgent. The older man turned to Hummingbird again just in time to be stuck on the nose by a fast-flying fist. Hey, Dad, who's the old guy? Naruto asked, looking down on the man. Naruto, meet Jiraiya of the Sannin, my sensei, and your godfather, the man who was supposed to take care of you if anything happened to me, Minato said icily. If we didn't need him to find Tsunade, I'd kill him for abandoning you like that. In MMPH. Jiraiya's utterance was cut off by Minato's hand. The name is Hummingbird, at least until Naruto can take care of himself, understood? Minato asked. Jiraiya nodded and the hand was removed. How are you alive? I don't know, but I think I have your quick seal work to thank for that. You know the preservation seal was never meant to be used on a living person, but I think it is what prevented me from dying. The real question is, where have you been for the last 7 years and why wasn't Naruto there with you? I was tracking down some dangerous criminals, which included Orochimaru and a certain masked man. I couldn't take a kid with me and the orphanage was taking care of him. And the ninja of the village were just so concerned about his poor upbringing that they decided to donate their kunai pointy end first. Minato asked sarcastically, you were his godfather, you should have found someone, anyone, to look after him, even if you had to take him to another village to make him safe. At the very least, you could have checked in on his birthday. You can't tell me that Konoha's greatest spymaster doesn't even know what goes on in his own village. So I messed up. It's not like I did nothing. I sent extremely generous donations to the orphanage to make sure that he got everything he needed. The same orphanage that let the bigger children steal his food, beat him for asking questions, and encouraged the other children to be cruel to him on his birthday. But the Anbu reports I read said that he was treated well at the orphanage, was safe, and had everything he needed. Jiraiya protested. Not according to Kakashi, who was the Anbu captain. Hey, isn't that one of the books Kakashi-sensei is always reading? Naruto asked, taking an orange book from Jiraiya's pocket. Oh, no, you don't. Minato snatched the book away from Naruto. What have I told you about these books? They're disgusting pieces of perverted filth that should be burned because throwing them out would defile the trash, Naruto said in a pretentious-sounding imitation of his father. They are not. Jiraiya hopped to his feet. My books are works of literary genius. You write these books? Naruto asked. Of course. Men bow before my works, the knees of women tremble in ecstasy at the sound of my name, one of the mighty Sannin of Konohagakure. I am Jiraiya, the great toad sage of Mount Myoboku. Jiraiya posed dramatically. Okay, I'll call you pervy sage. Naruto said, causing Jiraiya to collapse out of his pose and land in a dejected heap on the floor. I never get any respect, Jiraiya sighed. And what exactly have you done to earn it? Minato asked. I get it, I'm a useless old ninja, so I guess you really don't need me, so I'll just go off and do some more research. I don't think so. I need you to go find Tsunade and bring her back. The whole coming back from the dead thing has caused a few complications that only she has a chance of fixing. I've been back for 2 years waiting for you or Tsunade to show up. I want to be able to properly protect my son. I can look for her, but I can't promise she'll come back, Jiraiya said. If she doesn't come back on her own, knock her out and drag her back here. She's a ninja of this village and she has a duty to it. Return of the Hummingbird. Why won't this jutsu work? Naruto asked. He had been trying to get the clone jutsu to work for weeks. The substitution and henge jutsus were easy enough. In fact, his henge was better than most. For some reason his transformations were actually solid, a fact that neither Kakashi nor Minato had been able to explain, though they suspected that it was a case of having so much chakra used that it was actually malleable. You're putting in way too much chakra, his father explained. Jinjutsu like the basic clone require precise amounts of chakra, and you are using more than 100 times the amount of chakra needed. But I can't use any less, Naruto whined. Sensei, it is possible that he may never be able to use a jutsu that requires you to use so little chakra, Kakashi pointed out. Maybe we should teach him a different type of clone. I know a few of the elemental clone techniques. Or, we could teach him the shadow clone technique. If we used it for his training, imagine how fast he could improve. With his chakra reserves, I bet he could safely make dozens and still have plenty of chakra left over. You can't be serious. He starts at the academy next week and that's a Jounin level forbidden technique. What's a shadow clone? Naruto asked. It's like a normal clone, but it has a few advantages. For one, it is solid, so you can use it to do Taijutsu and throw things, but one good hit will dispel it. Secondly, it has a full chakra system, so your clones will be able to do jutsu. Finally, everything the shadow clone learns, you will learn when it dispels, making it the perfect jutsu for getting rid of paperwork or learning new things if you have the chakra for it, Minato explained. That jutsu sounds so cool. I want to learn it. Naruto exclaimed. But you have to promise not to teach any of your friends. This is a forbidden jutsu for a reason. If someone with small chakra reserves tries it, they will die from the chakra exhaustion. None of the other children are even close to having enough chakra for it. Even with the amount of chakra I have, this is my limit, Kakashi demonstrated, making 4 clones. I've seen the third Hokage make 5 before, not I have also seen Jounin who have collapsed from making just 1. I want to learn it. Naruto exclaimed excitedly, hopping from foot to foot in anticipation. Okay, but when you start going to the academy, I am going to have you leave a clone here and I'll begin to really teach you sealing. With any luck, by the time you reach Genin, you're going to have the basics down enough that you'll be able to make your own paper bombs and sealing scrolls. If we're teaching him the shadow clone jutsu, we might as well teach him the rest of the family, the shadow kunai, shadow shuriken, and Kakashi was interrupted. We are not teaching him the exploding shadow clone until he graduates. That's probably a good idea, Kakashi agreed. Even the shadow clones were pushing it, since Naruto had become quite bold in the pranks he had begun to pull on people. Just earlier this week, Naruto had covered all of Chaoji's snacks with hot sauce because the larger boy had taken the last potato chip. Naruto took to the new jutsu amazingly well. Within an hour, there were hundreds of Naruto clones running around. Some were sparring, others were playing games, and still others were practicing the shadow clone technique themselves, making dozens more clones at a time as they tried to make precise amounts. We've created a monster, Kakashi said, watching the chaos. At least they'll disappear when he goes to sleep, Minato replied. We could have every Jounin and Chunin in the village train him at the same time and there would still be plenty of him left. Are you sure we don't want to get Guy to wear him out a bit? No. Knowing my son, he would probably think the green spandex was cool and want an orange version for himself. Kakashi shuddered at the thought. Return of the Hummingbird. The first day of the academy was both good and bad for Naruto. It was good in that he got to see his friends more often. He hadn't seen Tenten as much for the past year since she had been in the academy while the rest of the group had not been old enough. He was looking forward to seeing her during the breaks. What he didn't like was how half the class treated him badly without even getting to know him. The teachers had also completely ignored his questions when he didn't understand the lessons and he had taken to creating shadow clones which would immediately dispel to send his questions to the clone who stayed with his father and that clone would then do the same thing when he got the answer. This wouldn't be so bad if he hadn't gotten kicked out of class for filling the room with smoke. After lunch, the teachers were suddenly and mysteriously more polite to him. When his clone dispelled, he learned that his father had paid a visit to the academy to have a talk with him. After lunch, things went better since it was physical training in the afternoons. First up had been Taijutsu. He had been paired against the Uchiha. Sasuke Uchiha was a smug bastard because he came from a famous clan. In the beginning of the fight, Sasuke was winning because he was much faster than Naruto. Is that the best a dead last clanless loser can do? Sasuke had mocked. I am not clanless. My mother was from the Uzumaki clan, which you should know is related to the first Hokage. Naruto had replied, and for your information, that is the best I can do while I am wearing my weights. As if you'd be able to touch me by dropping a few pounds, Sasuke had mocked. Naruto removed his weights. First from his arms, then from his legs. When he dropped them, a pair of craters was made in the hardened dirt of the sparring field. This had gotten the attention of the teacher who had insisted on being the one to spar against an unrestricted Naruto for the Uchiha's safety. I'm not done yet, Naruto had said when the teacher had immediately taken a ready stance. He had then proceeded to take off his jacket, revealing the weighted vest. This had also made a large crater on the ground. Then, Naruto took a ready stance opposite the Chunin instructor. Let's go. I'll let you make the first attack when you're ready, the instructor had allowed, not realizing how fast or strong the boy was without the weights. It was over in the blink of an eye. Naruto had raced across the field and thrown one punch into the instructor's gut and the man had flown right over the heads of the surrounding students and landed unconscious when he slammed into a tree. The entire class had been shocked at this display and a substitute had needed to be called in. The instructor had been the laughingstock of the village for weeks after that. After all, who could take a chunin seriously if he got beat up by an academy student on the boys' first day? After the taijutsu lesson was target practice. Naruto, Ino, Choji, Shino, Kiba, and, when it wasn't too troublesome to throw a kunai, Shikamaru all did well, hitting the targets more than not. Unfortunately, this was one area where the Uchiha had showed them up, bragging that he had been taught by his brother Itachi, who was the best Anbu in the village. After the lesson, Naruto had sent a clone into the woods to practice. That clone subsequently created another 100 clones, each of which used his entire supply of kunai before dispelling. He didn't care that he was not the best, but he hoped the Uchiha would not be bragging the next time. Return of the Hummingbird. Naruto's second year at the academy went much like the first, including the fact that he had been forbidden to remove his weights during taijutsu training for the safety of the other students. Unfortunately, taijutsu was the first thing in the morning, and Naruto's ranking dropped from first to dead last because he could barely move. His father had suggested that he just not increase the weight so much every morning, but Naruto refused, insisting that he needed to get stronger in order to be the greatest ninja in the world. After a year of study, Naruto was now beginning to understand seals, and Minato had moved on from teaching him calligraphy to teaching him about the basic sealing scroll and paper bomb, though he was only allowed to experiment creating the first. It was good that he had finally acquired enough information to warrant practical instruction, since the theory and calligraphy were awfully difficult for him to remember. Having mastered the academy taijutsu, Minato had also begun teaching him his own style of taijutsu, as well as advanced chakra control like tree walking. On one particular day after classes, Naruto took the scenic route home from the academy, passing through the woods and hoping to catch a glimpse of someone training. What he found was much worse. A girl no older than he was being picked on by a pair of genin boys. The two were tall for their age and nothing more than bullies picking on her for no reason. After a moment, he realized that the girl was from his class. She usually sat in the back of the classroom and was quiet and dark, not drawing attention to herself, so naturally, Naruto had barely known she had existed. "Hey you bastards, leave her alone." Naruto, ignoring the 2-to-1 odds, jumped between the two genin and the girl. "And what are you going to do about it, pipsqueak?" One of the genin asked, pushing Naruto over with a sudden hard shove. The two laughed. Naruto stared at them incredulously, then started laughing himself. "And what do you think is so funny?" the shorter of the two asked. "You actually think you can beat me?" Naruto laughed. "Well, what's a runt like you going to do? You're just a weak little academy student. Remember this," Naruto said seriously, "my name is Naruto Uzumaki and I am going to be Hokage one day. I will protect my precious people and two weaklings like you won't even slow me down." Naruto pumped his fist in determination, not even noticing the tomato red blush of the girl behind him, who had mistaken his speech as a confession. "If that's what you think, then it is time to put you into your proper place. Beneath my feet." The bully kicked out towards Naruto's face. To his surprise, Naruto tilted his head to avoid the strike, then punched the thigh of the standing leg, hitting a nerve cluster. "Even with my weights, you are too slow." Naruto complained as the boy cried out in pain and toppled backwards, letting the second boy swing a fist at Naruto. Having never faced multiple enemies before, he was unprepared for the attack because he had focused all of his attention on the larger boy. He took the full force of the blow and was knocked to the ground, feeling dizzy and having trouble focusing his eyes. "You'll pay for that, you little bastard." The larger boy was back up, not having been hit with Naruto's full strength. He was limping as he approached. "Hold him down," he ordered the smaller boy. As Naruto's head began to clear, the second boy twisted his arms up behind his back so that he couldn't move them without dislocating his shoulders. "Let me go." Naruto struggled, but the genin left him no chance of escape. "Feisty, aren't you? Maybe this will calm you down." He slammed the heel of his good leg into Naruto's gut, driving the air from his lungs. "Think you're so big? Only takes two of you big strong genin to take an academy student," Naruto coughed, "but you're not the only one who can play dirty." With one foot on Naruto's stomach, the genin's legs were spread apart just enough to leave him wide open and close enough to the ground that when Naruto lifted his leg with all his strength, his foot struck the genin's privates hard enough to lift the boy a foot into the air. The shocked boy blanched and let out a whispering gasp as he flew and was unconscious from the pain before he crumpled to the ground. "Ashi?" The one holding Naruto released him to check on his friend. "Did you forget about something?" Naruto asked, lifting himself into a crouch. The remaining bully drew a kunai. "You'll pay for that." "Sorry, did I knock out your boyfriend?" Naruto asked, smirking mischievously. This put the genin into a rage and he attacked. Naruto ducked under the kunai but felt it jam down into his shoulder and slashed down his back. It hurt, but he'd felt worse. He brought up his elbow and dashed forward a step, jamming it up into the genin's diaphragm. Naruto followed up with an uppercut that laid the older boy out cold. "Are you okay?" Naruto asked, holding out his hand. Why yes, the girl stammered, I'm fine, thank you. She took his hand, looking a little shaky, and he helped her to her feet. Naruto, feeling the strain on his back, winced in pain. The kunai. She exclaimed, realizing that he had been wounded. Take off your shirt. I can know a little about medicine. Naruto did as he was told and Hinata let out a startled squeal when she saw how bad the wound was. It's not that bad, Naruto assured her, I've had much worse. Just sit down and let me take care of it. You only got hurt because I was too weak. By Acaykath. The girl's eyes went from having no pupils to having no color at all as veins bulged around them. She frantically spun her head around for a moment, then ran off into the woods. The girl returned a minute later carrying a handful of plants and, using 2 stones, ground them into a white and green paste which she rubbed into his wound. Naruto flinched when it stung at first, but then it began to feel cool and soothing. By the time she finished, it felt like he wasn't winded at all. Wow, this stuff works great. That's amazing, he grinned before giving the shy girl a surprise hug. The girl blushed even more furiously before all the blood rushing to her head caused her to faint. Return of the Hummingbird. Minato returned home from shopping expecting to find Naruto doing homework, training, or raiding the raiment supply. The one thing he certainly did not expect was to find him asleep and cuddled on the couch with a girl he had never met. He gently roused Naruto. Who's your friend? Minato asked. I don't know. This was not the answer Naruto's father had been expecting. His heart pounded in his chest as he thought that Naruto had accidentally kidnapped some poor girl. He almost had a heart attack when the girl's eyes fluttered open and he realized that she was a main branch Hyuga and therefore the heir to the clan. Where am I? The girl asked, looking at the Anbu mask. Then, noticing the arms wrapped around her, she looked at Naruto, turned bright red, then fainted again. She did it again, Dad, do you think she's sick? Naruto asked. Minato laughed, realizing what had happened. The girl, obviously taken with Naruto, had fainted and, rather than leave her outside, Naruto had brought her home. It would probably cause a huge mess with her family when Naruto took her home, but at least he wasn't knocking out random strangers. So, how did you meet her? I was walking home through the woods and I heard some noises. I was hoping to spy on some ninjas training, but I saw 2 ninjas bullying her. I beat them up, but one of them stabbed me with a kunai, but she made it all better again with a bunch of plants. Then she fell asleep and I took her home. I'm pretty sure she's in my academy class, though I've never really talked to her before, Naruto explained. Well, I suppose her family should know what happened to her, they are probably worried about her. You know who she is? Naruto asked. You should know as well, Naruto, I did teach you about the major clans after all. Well, she has the Byakugan, so I know she's a Hyuga, Naruto reasoned, but that's a huge clan, there are hundreds of Hyuga clan members. How am I supposed to know who her family is? Because she doesn't have the caged bird seal. That means she is from the head family and therefore the daughter of the clan head Hiashi Hyuga. If you tell any one of the members of the clan that you are taking care of his daughter, I am sure the message will get to him. Return of the Hummingbird. Hiashi Hyuga stepped out of the Hokage Tower. The village council meeting had run late because the civilian council could not keep their noses out of ninja business. All their pointless arguments made his head hurt. He was so consumed with his thoughts that he did not notice the young boy running towards him until it was too late. The boy slammed into his chest, knocking him down into the dirt, then seemed to stare at his eyes for several seconds before asking, "You're a Hyuga, right?" Hiashi nodded, dumbfounded at the audacity of the young man. "Can you tell Hiashi Hyuga that his daughter will be home late? I found her being picked on by some bullies. I kicked their asses, but she fainted. I'll bring her home when she wakes up, okay? Wait." Hiashi tried to stop the blonde and find out what had happened to his daughter, but the boy disappeared in a puff of smoke. That was the Jinchuriki boy. He already knows the shadow clone jutsu. He knew the boy was in the same class as his daughter and, considering the strength of the boy when they had collided and his knowledge of the shadow clone jutsu, he wondered just how strong the boy would become. A minute later, he realized that his daughter was in the hands of the demon boy because her escort must not have picked her up from school. He was going to have to teach that Chunin what the caged bird seal could do. Return of the Hummingbird. Naruto used a kunai to slice the meat and vegetables for dinner. His father had taught him what little he knew of cooking a long time ago to help with his blade work and he had been helping ever since. There was more to do tonight because the girl would need to be fed as well, since she had not woken up yet. Hummingbird was heating up some instant miso broth on the stove. See, can I help? The young heiress had awoken while they had been cooking. Only if you tell me your name, Minato said, for now, I am called Hummingbird. And my name is Hinata Hyuga. It's nice to meet you, Hinata-chan. Why don't you help Naruto with the vegetables? Getting them all cut correctly is excellent training. It turned out that Hinata was a very good cook. Soon, she was giving Naruto and Minato tips on how to improve the meal, and they ended up with a meal tastier than either of the men had ever prepared. This is awesome, Hinata-chan. Naruto exclaimed as he wolfed down the meal, I wish I could eat your food every day. Hinata blushed furiously. My if you want, I see can make Yulu lunches for school. Thanks, Hinata, that would be great. Dad's idea of lunch is a ration bar. Naruto gave his father a deadpan look. Minato just grinned behind his mask. Not only did his son get himself a girlfriend even if he didn't know it yet, but he had also saved him the trouble of making a lunch in the morning. The only downside was that he would have to make a visit to Hiashi Hyuga to make sure things went smoothly. Return of the Hummingbird. Naruto walked Hinata home, with Minato shadowing the pair at a distance. Naruto was holding her hand the entire way because he usually dragged his friends around this way. He was oblivious to how the girl was reacting to the contact. Minato was pretty sure that she was on the verge of fainting several times. When they reached the gates of the Hyuga compound, Hinata was informed that her father wanted to see her immediately. Naruto could only stand there in shock when Hinata gave him a peck on the cheek before rushing inside. So, when were you planning on telling me she was your girlfriend? Minato whispered into Naruto's ear after sneaking upon him. But Naruto sputtered, I didn't do anything. You saved her, took her home and cared for her, had dinner with her, walked her home hand in hand, and starting tomorrow she's making your lunches for you. If you were any further along, you'd be married by now, Minato teased. But, it was an accident. Are you saying you don't like her? Minato asked. No, I never really thought about it. Now Naruto was the one who was blushing. You know, when she brings you a lunch tomorrow, everyone in the class is going to know she's your girlfriend, whether you acknowledge it or not. Is there any reason you wouldn't want her as your girlfriend? She's cute and kind and is good with herbs both for medicine and cooking, and not to mention rich, from a good family, and all that stuff too. But, I barely know her, Naruto replied. Well, since she's your girlfriend, you'll be spending plenty of time getting to know her, won't you? Besides, you did say you wanted to eat her cooking every day, you know that could be considered a marriage proposal. But I am only, Naruto counted on his fingers, 11 years old. That's okay, even as a ninja you wouldn't get married until you're 16, for safety reasons. Or is there some reason you don't like her? She does seem to like you an awful lot. If she didn't, she wouldn't blush so hard that she faints when you get too close. So, it is my fault she kept fainting? Naruto asked. If you consider being too lovable your fault, then yes. I guess it wouldn't be too bad having a girlfriend. I could rub it in Sasuke and Kiba's faces. Naruto grinned. Then, I'll go talk to her father and set up the engagement. This time it was Naruto who fainted. Minato grinned, then sighed. No one would accept Naruto Uzumaki the orphan as a consideration for a betrothal contract, which meant that one more person would have to be let in on the secret. He wondered where the hell Jiraiya was with Tsunade. Minato walked up to the Hyuga gatekeepers and requested a meeting with Hiashi. He didn't bother to inform the man that he was not really an Anbu nor here on village business. Return of the Hummingbird. Hiashi was not in a good mood. First the civilian council had wasted his time. Then, the blonde boy had knocked him down in an undignified fashion. Afterward, he found out the reason Hinata had been alone was because the clan elders had forced her bodyguard to look after Hanabi instead without assigning a new guard. Then, Hinata had returned and had completely ignored his demand for a meeting. He wasn't sure whether to be angry at her for that or be proud that she hadn't started crying at the demand. She had always been too emotional for a Hyuga. Now, an Anbu was here with a Jinchuriki in his arms and demanding an audience. The Hokage was going to get an earful in the morning if this wasn't important. Send him in, Hiashi growled. The gate guard was hasty enough in retreating from his presence not to raise any more of his ire. A few minutes later, Hummingbird entered his private office and sat down without even a bow of the head, as the least one would expect towards the head of a prestigious clan. The Anbu sat Naruto on the floor and let the boy's head rest on his lap. Hiashi's eyebrow twitched in irritation at the unprofessional attitude. Welcome to my home, Hiashi ground out, trying not to snap at his guest. Hummingbird remained silent and glanced around the office. Just when Hiashi was about to throw the man out, he spoke, what I have to discuss will include information that is an S-class secret known only to myself, the Hiruzen Sarutobi and Kakashi Haddock. Please activate the sound dampening, vision disrupting and privacy seals, as well as any I have failed to notice to ensure that this conversation remains between us. Would you like the boy to remain outside? I can send for a branch member to take care of him while we talk, Hiashi offered. With a request like this, it really had to be serious. No. The matter concerns him, and I don't think he will wake up for a few minutes yet. He just had a rather large emotional shock. Hiashi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Could there be something wrong with the seal that they needed a Hyuga to examine? Had the boy gotten himself into some sort of trouble? I see, Hiashi said, steeling his nerves. This was going to be big. He pricked his thumb with a silver letter opener and swiped it across a seal on his desk. Symbols glowed across the wall, ceiling and floor in a dazzling array before fading and leaving a slight hum of chakra in the air. Not even a Hyuga, Uchiha, Inuzuka, Nara and Yamanaka working together can eavesdrop while these seals are in place. Good. Then let's get down to business, Hummingbird said. I am here to arrange a betrothal between the boy known as Naruto Uzumaki and the first daughter of the main family of the Hyuga clan, Hinata Hyuga. The Ashi was stunned. Of all the things he had expected to hear, this was not one of them. He gripped the desk, fighting the urge to juken the man in the face for this farce. Get out before I throw you out. I will not hear any of this nonsense. No, the masked man replied with more authority than Hiashi thought he had any right to. I'm going to file a complaint at the Hokage's office tomorrow. I'll have your ninja license suspended for this disrespectful behavior. If you feel the need to complain to the reigning Hokage, then speak. I may be on a medical sabbatical, but Minato removed his mask, I still have the authority. Acaykath. Hiashi activated his Ninjutsu, but the man was not concealing his identity in any way. I am Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, head of the Namikaze clan, and father of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Minato stated plainly. You're telling the truth, but it is impossible. I saw you dead with my own eyes. He had already forgotten his anger in the midst of his surprise. Minato withdrew one of his Hiraishin kunai and slid it across the floor. In the blink of an eye he was across the room, but was back in place supporting Naruto's head before it could hit the floor. I trust that you will need no more proof to verify my identity. No, how is this possible? Hiashi asked. When I sealed the Kyuubi into my son, Minato restored the mask to his face. I sacrificed my soul with the Shiki Fuin, but before the payment was completed, Jiraiya placed a preservation seal on me. It was never meant to be used on a living body, and I was put into a preserved state for 5 years. When I woke up, my chakra system was depleted and not regenerating, and I found that my son was being treated like trash despite my wishes. I have sent Jiraiya to find Tsunade, but I do not know when he will return. The Ashi focused his eyes on Minato's body. I see. I am amazed you are even alive right now. Half your body is not generating or circulating chakra. It is only because the other half is generating so much that it is being forced through the dead coils by the pressure. Anyone else would be dead. Well, I don't give up that easily, Minato laughed, it takes more than certain death to stop me. Let us hope Tsunade returns soon so that you will be able to resume your duties. Even with our advanced knowledge of the chakra system, this is beyond anything we can deal with. Thank you for giving me more information about my ailment. I will just have to rely on chakra infusions from Kakashi's chakra battery until then. And, as for the betrothal, this is a difficult decision. I know that the Namikaze family was never well off and lost everything in the attack. There is also the negative reputation that the boy has, and the possibility that he could be corrupted or release the demon, Hiashi argued without malice. But he is the top of his class, and that is despite attempts by the teachers to sabotage him. He is strong and fast, and I am teaching him my techniques. I am sure that you have heard of his ability to use shadow clones. Any day when he is seen at school, I am teaching one of his shadow clone sealing. He has some practice their marksmanship, jutsu, and chakra control. He will be the strongest ninja the world has ever seen. With Hiraishin, shadow clones, and Rasengan, who could stand against him, and if he learns to control the fox's chakra on top of that, can you really say that you won't want that power associated with your clan? He is related to 3 of the 4 Hokages, and the other treats him like a grandson. When he takes over as clan head and receives a seat on the council, and when he becomes the next Hokage, don't you want your daughter to be the one beside him, whispering advice into his ear, making him forever loyal to the Hyuga clan? You were always good at inspirational speeches, but there is no guarantee of any of those things happening. He could run across Iwa Shinobi on his first C-rank mission and get slaughtered, Hiashi responded. Minato pushed onwards, knowing that Hiashi was close to breaking. As a bride price, I will design a new caged bird seal. Rather than activating by a seal, it would activate automatically based on the bearer's intentions. Purposefully breaking clan rules would result in pain. Disobeying a direct order from a member of superior rank without a countermanding order from a member superior to the one giving the order, or purposefully disregarding orders, would result in debilitating pain. Betraying the clan would result in instant death. It would also seal the Byakugan upon death as the current seal does. It could even be used on main branch members without fearing that it could be used against them. You know that I've never approved of the punishment aspect of the seal, and it is a liability if an outsider ever learns of it. But this is not about politics, it is about love and your daughter's happiness. Why don't you let her make the decision? Minato asked, knowing that his plan had worked. There was no way Hiashi could say no to this request after the arguments he had made, and he knew Hinata would agree. I'll send for her, Hiashi sighed, defeated. Remember, no one is to know my little secret, not even Naruto, until I am well or I reveal it to them. I understand, Hiashi said, disabling the privacy seals before sending a branch member to fetch his daughter. Hinata arrived a few minutes later, with a smile still on her face. You called for me, father. She glanced over at the sleeping Naruto, a light blush tinting her cheeks. Yes. I have a very important decision for you to make. Hiashi reactivated the seals. This decision will have consequences. If you agree with this choice, your sister will be clan head in your stead. The Ashi paused dramatically and Hinata was trembling with excitement. If you choose this choice, we will also stop using the current version of the cage bird seal and apply a new seal to all members of the clan. Hinata, Naruto Uzumaki has asked for your betrothal, will you accept? Yes. Hinata quickly covered her mouth, then nodded meekly. The Ashi was astounded at his daughter's enthusiasm. She had not shown such determination since the incident with the Cloud Ambassador. Naruto began to stir, the loud exclamation having roused him. Well, it is only fair that we ask him the same question, Hiashi said. Naruto, do you want to be betrothed to Hinata? Minato asked his son. Does she know how to make ramen? Naruto asked. I don't, but I will learn, Hinata said. Okay, Naruto agreed, causing both the adults to sigh. Well, I suppose that proves it, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, Minato chuckled. Personally, I prefer going through the sternum, Hiashi said as he began to draw up the betrothal contract. Chapter 6. A Fox and His Vixen. The next day at the academy, Hinata made it a point to sit with Naruto. She held his hand during the lectures, occasionally resting her head on his shoulder, though a few of those times it was because she had fainted. She was determined to get over that problem. Naruto certainly wasn't complaining about the attention. It was nice to have a girl who was fawning over him instead of Sasuke. When Hinata gave him a lunch, it was too much for one of the Chunin instructors. He marched over, grabbed the lunch, and flung it across the room where it hit the wall and fell, spilling its contents on the floor. What do you think you're doing making lunch for this demon child? Hinata grabbed onto Naruto's arm, trembling. Naruto, seeing her fear, made a hand sign and released the chakra in his weights. Apologize to Hinata, Naruto ordered, glaring at the man. Why should I? Anyone who would be nice to something like you is no more than trash. For the first time in his life, Naruto felt truly angry. Fear and sorrow were regular feelings for him, but he had never been angry at the villagers. He had just wanted them to accept him. Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath to try and calm himself. It didn't work. You can insult me. You can attack me. You can be a total fucking bastard to me in whatever way you want, but you will leave Hinata alone. When he opened his eyes, they had turned blood red with slit pupils. He glared at the Chunin, releasing killing intent like that which hadn't been felt in over a decade. He wrapped his arms around Hinata protectively, secretly crossing his fingers and forming a shadow clone behind the teacher. I don't know how you corrupted her, demon, but you will both die today. He drew a kunai from his weapons pouch and launched himself at the two students. You first, Naruto said impassively. His clone attacked the man from behind, punching him in the back of the head. The Chunin instructor flew past Naruto and Hinata and through the wall behind them. The clone leapt through the hole that was created and dragged the unconscious Chunin away. It's over now, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, but Hinata just snuggled into him more. Do you want to go home? He asked. She nodded. He made another clone to pick up his lunch, then carried Hinata back towards the Hyuga compound. She suddenly seemed amazingly light and delicate to him. Half of the way back, the clone caught up to him and dispelled. Naruto sat against a convenient tree and ate with Hinata sitting on his lap. Why you shouldn't he eat that, it's bno on the F floor. Hinata squeaked. I don't care. You made it for me, so I am going to eat it. Even with the dirt, it is still the best tasting lunch I've had outside of Ichiraku's ramen. Hinata smiled at the compliment and held even tighter to him. In a flash of light, Naruto's father appeared. Are you two alright? Yeah, I released my weights first so he didn't even touch me, Naruto said. We need to get Hinata home before Hiashi finds out what happened. He'll be worried if he can't find her, Minato said. Yeah, we were already going. How did you know so fast? Naruto asked. Rather than working on your seals, your clone jumped out of the window, swearing vengeance on your instructor. He deserves whatever he gets for trying to hurt Hinata, Naruto said. His eyes flashed red for a moment which did not go unnoticed by his father. Naruto, what did you just do? What do you mean? Naruto asked. Your eyes changed color. They became red for a second. But, my eyes are blue. Naruto said. Naruto, I want you to imagine someone trying to hurt Hinata again, like they used to hurt you. The response was almost immediate, Naruto's eyes turned red again. Now, keep thinking about them hurting her and focus some chakra into your eyes. Minato instructed, wondering if emotions other than rage could be used to transform Naruto's eyes. A mixture of blue and red chakra coalesced on Naruto's eyes, and the pupils became slit, and as he added more chakra, the sclera turned black and the eyes further transformed to a glowing gold. Gyokugen, Minato murmured, he had been up close and personal with similar eyes once before. Do things look any different? Minato asked. Minato looked up and into his eyes, watching what was transpiring, her curiosity overwhelming her fear-induced trembling. You and Hinata are glowing red, and so are the bugs, and that rabbit, Naruto pointed, but Minato couldn't see anything. Byakugan. Hinata activated her own Ninjutsu. I can barely see it, but there are trees in the way. There are 3 baby rabbits a few feet below it. Naruto continued. Look at me, Naruto, and focus on the glow. What does it look like? It's flashing, now, Naruto said, but some parts aren't flashing. Naruto proceeded to point to every guaranteed kill point on Minato's body. Minato stood up straight and maced back and forth for a moment. Interesting. Those spots are leaving a trail of glow when you move. This is interesting. It could be very useful. And Hinata has glowing spots that you don't. Oh really? Where? Hinata asked. Well, there's one here. Naruto felt a strange urge, and instead of pointing to the spot on her neck, he bent his head and ran his tongue over the glow. Hinata gave a low moan, then fainted. What happened? Naruto asked. Well, for one, if you want to live, I recommend not telling Hiashi about the extra spots until after you are married. Minato wiped a small trickle of blood from his nose. And, we will have to find out if they only show up for Hinata or whether all girls have the extra spots. I think we are going to also have Hinata help with your training. If you learn how to make Juuken-style attacks with your Yokugan, a single punch from you would be deadly with or without any strength behind it. Well, we don't have time for more experiments, Minato said, we have to get to the Hyuga compound. Return of the Hummingbird. When the 3 arrived at the Hyuga compound, Hiashi was already there, and the man almost fainted himself when he saw Naruto carrying Hinata. It wasn't the fact that he was carrying her, it was the gold and black eyes, the elongated fangs and the pointed claws. Those features, combined with his usual smile, came together to create a truly frightening visage, especially for someone who had seen the fox attack. Anbu, 3 o'clock. Naruto turned and pointed with a laugh. A man in a bull mask appeared from behind a tree and teleported away with a shunshin, not looking happy about having his camouflage skills defeated by a mere academy student. What really irked Hiashi is that he had been standing there for 5 minutes and not noticed the Anbu himself. He glanced at the gate guards, and they looked as surprised as he was, though being of the Hyuga clan, only another Hyuga could tell the subtle difference in their expressions. What happened? Hiashi asked. He tried to attack Hinata, so I kicked his ass, and now I have a Ninjutsu. Hiashi sighed. The explanation gave him the basic story, but none of the relevant facts that he needed to act. Well, the Ninjutsu part was interesting, but it could wait. Who tried to attack my daughter? One of the instructors. He was in charge of us during lunch and got all mad when Hinata gave me the lunch she made. He yelled at us, and I told him to leave Hinata alone, but he just got angrier and pulled out a kunai. I summoned a clone behind him and smacked him through the wall. And, where is he now? Hiashi asked. Naruto thought for a moment. I don't know. My clone dragged him off, but he should be gone by now. Upon hearing this, Minato chopped Naruto on the back of the neck, knocking him unconscious, catching the children in his arms. If the clone was still out there, that should dispel it. Was that really necessary? Hiashi asked. When thinking about what the man tried to do to Hinata, Naruto got angry and began releasing red chakra. If he used that chakra to make a clone, you don't think even Hiashi's usually stoic features flashed panic at the thought of a Kyuubi clone on the loose? We should get them inside and lie them down, Hiashi said with forced calm, hopefully the memories of the clone will have returned. In the meantime, I was wondering if the Hyuga had anything like the Juuken, but focused on destroying organs and muscles instead of attacking chakra points. Yes, but it takes a lot more chakra or a lot more control to be as effective as a Juuken strike. We developed it in case there was ever a member from the main house who never developed the Byakugan and yet still wanted to be a ninja. Thankfully, the Byakugan is a dominant trait, so such a thing has yet to occur. Naruto's Ninjutsu allows him to see and track the vital points, even through solid objects or at distances that exceed the range of Hinata's Byakugan. I see. But, these are Hyuga clan jutsu. I cannot just give away clan jutsu, Hiashi said, even to my future son-in-law. Then a trade. You teach the Kaiten and other advanced Juuken only to the main branch. I was known for 2 of my personal techniques, one of which would fit well with the Hyuga style. The brutal fist Acaykath for the Rasengan. There are certain heavy armor techniques that render the Juuken less effective, and a technique like the Rasengan would be perfect for penetrating such defenses, Hiashi admitted, hating the fact that the Juuken still had weaknesses that could be improved upon despite the clan dogma. And, don't forget about when people expel chakra as you are sealing the Tenketsu, Minato said, pointing out one of the other big weaknesses of the Juuken. If the person could match or exceed the amount of chakra the Hyuga was injecting into the chakra coil, the Juuken strike would be negated. Return of the Hummingbird. I can't believe you mastered the Rasengan in an hour. It took Jiraiya 3 months to get it down, and Kakashi still has trouble with it, Minato grumbled childishly. This technique is almost entirely chakra control. As you said before, it is well matched with the abilities of a Hyuga, Hiashi responded smugly. Hey. I can see with my eyes closed. Naruto suddenly interrupted, standing up from the chair in which he had been placed. He saw Hinata a few feet away and ran towards her, only to trip over a low table. He grabbed his shin, cursing in pain. Ow. Damn it, what was that? Try opening your eyes, Minato suggested, smirking with amusement at Naruto's antics. Naruto did as he was told and found that he was on the porch next to the training grounds. Why couldn't I see the table? He asked. What else do you see other than people? Minato asked. Well, I can see the ground out in the sun, but it is kind of fuzzy. There are pipes running along here inside the wall, Naruto pointed out. There is a candle lit in the room on the other side of this wall. Can you see anything in that building? Hiashi pointed to a small building on the other side of the courtyard. No, it's like it doesn't even exist. What's in there? Naruto asked. Cold storage, Hiashi replied, you can see heat. In that case, we need to test how well his vision works against fire jutsu. They could impair his vision. But, more importantly, Naruto, do you remember anything from the clone that dragged off the teacher? Yeah, my first punch paralyzed him. I think his neck broke when I punched his head, or he broke through the wall. I dragged him into the woods behind the academy, and then my memories are kind of fuzzy, like I can only see pieces. Naruto shuddered as he thought about what he remembered. He was all beat up, then he had cuts all over his body and was crying, then pieces of his body were missing, then his head was hanging from a tree, and I didn't know where I was. Naruto shivered. Naruto, did you feel a different chakra when you got angry? Minato asked. Yeah, Naruto realized, it felt all red and burning. Do not make clones with that chakra. It can be dangerous if you do not control it, Minato said seriously, do you understand? I killed him, Naruto suddenly realized. First kill, Hiashi muttered. Minato nodded. It's okay, Naruto, Minato said, gathering Naruto into a tight embrace, you were protecting Hinata. Killing someone to protect someone you love from harm is not necessarily a bad thing. It wasn't all your fault either. You didn't know about the red chakra. It will be okay. Hiashi-sama. One of the Hyuga guards came rushing over, Mikoto Uchiha and her son are here. Her shoes are covered in blood. Bring her to me, but take her shoes and have them cleaned. A few minutes later, a woman with black hair and eyes and a face bloodless from fear, stumbled into their presence carrying Sasuke Uchiha. Please give us sanctuary. Itachi, he's killing everyone, the whole clan. The civilians, the women, the children. The woman trembled, holding back sobs. He was so fast. If Sasuke has not come home early, I would never have noticed and I need to go tell Sarutobi, Minato said, take care of the children. Minato disappeared in a flash of light. Hiashi began shouting orders to the Hyugas, and things went so fast that Naruto did not know what was happening. He was rushed up to Hinata's room by a branch clan member, then a Jinjutsu put him to sleep. Chapter 7. Blindness. Minato appeared in the Hokage's office, right in front of Danzo, Koharu and Homura, much to their shock as they instantly recognized the technique. He didn't have time to deal with them though. Sarutobi-sama, Itachi Uchiha is slaughtering the Uchiha clan. Minato announced gravely. The third Hokage's eyes jumped to Danzo with a look of betrayal. Half a second later, Danzo was held to the wall by his neck and had a kunai to his good eye. Minato was well aware of Danzo's clandestine activities. It had caused him no end of trouble when he had been the active Hokage. Danzo must have been more careful since then if he was still performing his black operations. You have 5 seconds to explain yourself before I execute you for treason against the village, Minato said gravely. The Uchiha clan was planning a coup, Danzo replied calmly. Minato turned to Hiruzen Sarutobi for confirmation, which he gave with a nod. And how does that give you the right to issue an execution order for the entire clan, including the women, children and civilians? We were planning to have negotiations tomorrow morning. I already discussed this with Fugaku, Hiruzen said angrily. And you lost the element of surprise. The leaders of the clan met this afternoon, along with our spy Itachi. Since you knew about the coup, they moved the timeline forward and were going to attack tonight. You should have brought this intelligence to the Hokage. The man's smugness after admitting to treason really pissed Minato off. Everyone gasped in shock as Minato jammed the kunai into the man's brain. The punishment for a ninja of Konoha attacking a civilian of Konoha with intent to kill is execution. I suppose that is one way to solve the root problem, Sarutobi sighed, but he had connections to the daimyo. This is going to hurt us. I ordered Root disbanded years ago, Minato said, operating a private shinobi force within Konoha is treason. Why was this man allowed to live so long? We never could get any proof of his crimes, and he had too much political support, he replied with a resigned sigh. His Root agents could never give him up because they had a seal that would kill them if they were about to reveal information. I lost 2 Yamanakas to the seal when their minds were trapped within the dying agent's body. Then, you should have sent Danzo to T&I and had them check him instead, Minato said. Sarutobi, I want peace as much as the next man, but we can't have peace without order. We can save this argument for another time, the third Hokage said, but for now we have a massacre to deal with. Bear, find Itachi. Tell him to report to the Hokage's office immediately. If he refuses, tell him that Danzo has been executed for treason and that he will not be held responsible for what was done under Danzo's orders if he cooperates. The mentioned Anbu revealed himself and looked at Sarutobi, who nodded in assent. Eagle, go to Anbu headquarters. Operation is search, rescue, and detain any and all Uchiha. There are 2 in the Hyuga compound, but they can be left until the injured are taken care of. Another Anbu revealed herself, then disappeared. Sarutobi, convene the ninja council. I'm taking back my hat, half dead or not. You know, I've been waiting for this day, Sarutobi said, ever since you returned, I've been preparing. He smirked and rubbed some blood on a seal on his desk and several piles of paperwork appeared. Welcome back. He tossed the Hokage hat to its rightful owner. As nice as this little get-together is, perhaps you might explain why the yellow flash is still alive, Homura said. Oh, I almost forgot about you too, Minato said. Tiger, escort them to Ibiki, I want to know what they know about Danzo's former activities. I also want all Anbu off duty until Ibiki or Inoichi give them full psychological evaluations. The Anbu are the hand of the Hokage, no one else. As you command, Hokage Dono, welcome back. The man gave a nod, then beckoned for the 2 to follow. One more thing, Minato said, the identity of the Hokage is an S-class secret. Return of the Hummingbird. When Naruto woke from the sleep Ninjutsu, he could feel Hinata trembling against his chest. Her eyes were wide open with her Byakugan activated and her hands were clutching tightly to the front of his shirt. Are you okay? Naruto asked. Hinata responded by both nodding her head and shaking it at the same time, as if she could not decide which answer to give. Naruto stroked her hair and said, tell me what's wrong. Over the next couple hours, Hinata told him a story of when she was 5. An ambassador from Kumagakure had been lodging in the Hyuga mansion for the duration of his stay. After the treaty had been signed, he had snuck into Hinata's room and kidnapped her. He had been planning to take her eyes, cripple her, then use her as breeding stock to create more Hyugas for Kumagakure. In the end, her father had caught up to and killed the man, but it had been a frightening experience for her, and the events of the past day reminded her so much of what had happened. I'll never let anyone hurt you. Naruto promised, even if the Raikage himself came for you, I'd kill him with my own hands. This seemed to calm Hinata somewhat and he told her of what had happened on his own 5th birthday. When Hinata had trouble believing it, he told her about his 4th birthday and his 3rd. Hinata had been completely appalled at the way the citizens of their own village acted. I want to be stronger, Hinata said. I want to be able to protect YUT too. A bunch of the academy students meet up on Saturdays to train behind the Hagane weapon shop. You should join us. Hagane sensei teaches us Kenjutsu. Kakashi sensei teaches us ninjutsu, and my dad teaches us Taijutsu and Fuinjutsu, though I am a lot more advanced than them because I leave shadow clones at home, so dad can train them. I can already make my own sealing scrolls and can even modify them to store different things. And I am starting to learn how to make explosive notes. As sealing is very completely located. You must be very smart. No, I've blown up enough clones practicing that eventually the lesson sticks. Naruto laughed. His learning method was not the most efficient, but it was very effective. But, my dad is pretty great. He doesn't even make his seals based on the patterns. He can actually make new ones off the top of his head as he needs them. I doubt I'll ever be that good. No, you'll be better. Hinata replied confidently, if YUD don't give up, I can know why you can do anything. Hinata looked into his eyes and screamed. Your eyes are BLBL bleeding. Naruto did notice that the world was looking a little darker. The Hyuga Chunin burst through the door as if expecting a fight. What's wrong? She asked. Naruto looked at her, but she saw before he could say anything. Turn off your Taijutsu, or else you'll go blind. She was a medic nin and had seen this before in Hyugas who overused their Byakugan. However, the response was new. How? Naruto asked nervously. He had only learned to turn it on that afternoon. He had never even considered how to disable it. Just stop focusing chakra to your eyes. But I haven't been focusing chakra into my eyes since I activated it, Naruto said worriedly as the darkness began to deepen. DP please, help him. Hinata pleaded. Just give me a second to think, the woman replied, Byakugan. She could see chakra pooled in his eyes, but he was not adding more to it. The Byakugan required the user to continually feed a chakra to remain activated and would disable itself if the user became unconscious. This Taijutsu, on the other hand, seemed to remain active until purposefully shut off. Try drawing the chakra out of your eyes. Naruto shut his eyes and focused on pushing the chakra out of his eyes, and they began to hurt. Stop, you're just adding more. I'll try something. She tapped the tenketsu, controlling the flow of chakra to his eyes, forcing the ones leading away from his eyes to open, while forcing the ones leading to his eyes to close. With that, the extra chakra drained away from his eyes and they returned to their regular blue hue. "Now, I can't see it all," Naruto whimpered. "Is that supposed to happen?" "I don't know, I've never done this before," the medic responded. Hinata took his hand. "It will be alright," she tried her best to comfort him. "WEC Kanawa always get you some replacement eyes. If your optic nerve was not damaged." It was common for Hyugas to get eye replacement surgery if they had an eye damaged in combat. "With any luck it will get better on its own," the woman said, patting him on the head, which caused him to flinch in fear. He did not like not being able to see, but just to be sure, "I'll take a closer look." She activated a diagnostic jutsu and ran it over his face. "That is odd. It is almost like your eyes have been burned from the inside. I've never even heard of anything like this." This, of course, did not reassure Naruto, and his hand began to squeeze Hinata's until her hand began to hurt. "Nah Naruto, your hand," Hinata whimpered. Sorry," Naruto stammered back, dropping her hand like it was a hot coal. "Don't worry. You'll be fine. We just need someone with more experience to look at this." For some reason, the medic's words did nothing to comfort him. Hinata, in an extraordinary fit of bravery, wrapped her arm around his head and hugged him to her chest and stroking his head. This caused Naruto to make a startling discovery which, in his shock, he shouted to the world, "Hinata-chan has boobies." Naruto's issues were instantly forgotten. Hinata collapsed in a dead faint. The medic began to laugh hysterically. A few seconds later, Hiashi burst into the room yelling, "What are you doing to my daughter?" "I didn't do anything," Naruto protested, answering Hiashi's question to a quite uninterested potted plant. Except for the medic's giggling, there was silence for a moment, then Hiashi let loose a string of curse words such as had rarely ever been heard from a Hyuga, leaving both Naruto and the medic shocked. "Well, what are you still doing here? Run to the Hokage's office and get his father," Hiashi ordered. "At once, Hiashi-sama." The medic tried to exit the room, only to collide with one of the gate guards. "Hiashi-sama, there is an urgent summons from the 3rd Hokage, an emergency council meeting," the Hyuga announced. "Fine. You two make sure nothing else happens to these two while I am gone. I will inform his father of what happened personally." Return of the Hummingbird. The council members gathered, but there was a great stir among them. First was the fact that only the Ninja Council had been called. The councils had been held jointly for years. Second was the fact that Hiruzen Sarutobi did not wear the mantle of the Hokage and sat in the Sarutobi clan seat. When Hiashi arrived, the entire council had been convened. He waited and a few minutes later, the Hokage entered wearing both the Hokage robe and the Hummingbird mask and took the seat at the head of the table. Before he could get started, Hiashi said, "Hokage-sama, there was an incident with your son and he's gone blind." "What happened?" Minato demanded. "He never learned to disable his Dijutsu and it did not disable itself automatically when he slept. His eyes were overloaded with the chakra." Minato was stricken. He had assumed that the Dijutsu was perfectly safe, after all, the others he knew of needed a continuous supply of chakra to remain active. "The meeting agenda has changed," he said gravely, and used more chakra than he was comfortable with in his condition to summon a small blue and red toad. "What's up? Wait, you're not Jiraiya," the toad exclaimed. "I have a message that I want you to deliver. Jiraiya has had over 3 years to bring Tsunade back. By order of the Hokage, he has 3 days to bring her back. If she continues to refuse, she will be considered a missing ninja and he is still to bring her back, alive if possible. Do you have all that?" The little toad repeated the message word for word in Minato's own voice. "Good, deliver the message and, afterward, tell Gamabunta that Minato Namikaze has returned." Several of the council members gasped in recognition of the name, while Hiashi and Sarutobi seemed unfazed by the revelation. "To everyone here, you may have noticed Fugaku, Danzo, Kaharu, and Hamura missing," Minato said. "To put things simply, Fugaku was planning a coup and Danzo committed multiple cases treason. I hope that the rest of you are more loyal to the village than them. And, for everyone's benefit, I will inform you now that anything mentioned in this room today, including the identity of the Hokage, is an S-class secret until such time as I or my eventual replacement chooses to reveal it. Any questions?" "Several," Shikaku Nara said. "First, your son, I assume, is Naruto Uzumaki." The Hokage nodded, validating the assumption, which made several clan heads look nervous, including Inoichi Yamanaka, who had already made the mistake of confronting Minato about his son. Second, who ordered Fugaku's death? Without consulting the Hokage, Danzo ordered the massacre of the entire Uchiha clan, including the civilians by the Anbu captain Itachi Uchiha. It was also discovered that he was running a secret and privately owned army of ninjas conducting black operations both inside Konoha and in the lands of other nations. This caused more murmurs. "Where is Itachi now?" Tsume Inyazuka spat out as if the man's name was a dirty word. The Inyazukas considered family as a sacred thing. To kill one of your own pack was worse than any other murder. He managed to kill all but 2 of the Uchihas, to the best of our knowledge, and has fled. A squad of Anbu has gone to offer him amnesty under the conditions that he cooperates with the investigation into Danzo's crimes. My third question is, why are you alive and why have you been neglecting your duties as Hokage for these past years? Shikaku asked. For the first 5 years, I was dead, or at least in a death-like state, because Jiraiya managed to put the preservation seal on me, as the death god was extracting my soul in payment for sealing away the Kyuubi. Due to this, when I awoke, I had medical complications which could not be handled by anyone currently in Konoha. But, recent developments have shown me that my predecessor just isn't up to handling the duties of the Hokage, and due to my condition, neither am I. Until such time as Tsunade returns and heals my condition, I will remain in charge of the shinobi forces, while Hiruzen will be in charge of the civilian matters, and we shall jointly advise one another. This statement caused the third Hokage to curse. He had hoped to be free of the position. Is there any other business anyone wants to put forth before the Hokage ends the meeting? Sarutobi asked. What is the cover story for the fourth's return? Asked Shibi Abiram. Why, the truth of course, Minato said, because the third is getting too old to handle all the responsibilities of being Hokage, he has chosen a successor with whom he is sharing his duties until it is determined that he is fit to take on the full duties of the Hokage. Of course, this successor is only known as the former Anbu Captain Hummingbird. Minato got up, then proceeded to leave the room, stopping at the door. One more thing, from this day forth, attacking a civilian child of this village with the intent to cause harm will now carry a sentence of death without a trial if necessary. And, unlike Sarutobi, I will enforce the law I made. Minato flashed from the room to the kunai carried by his son. Chapter 8. Diplomacy. Minato looked at his son who was sleeping peacefully in Hinata's lap. There were tears of blood leaking from the boy's eyes, but the medic who had been looking over him had said it was just his body purging the dead cells and nothing to worry about. Hinata was awake, softly stroking his hair and sporting a light blush. Hinata had not been able to speak at all coherently, and when the medic explained why, things just got worse. Had his son not been in a serious medical dilemma, Minato probably would have found it funny. Naruto stirred, opening his eyes. Morning, Dad, he yawned, Hinata-chan. Naruto, how are your eyes? They're fine. Why wouldn't they be? Naruto wiped the encrusted detritus from the corners of his eyes. Naruto, remember, last night you were blind, Minato said. But, I slept didn't I? Why would anything be wrong? Can you check his eyes again? Minato asked. I'll take a look, the Hyuga medic said after a few seconds of stunned silence. Everything is healthy, she reported with a gasp. No, that's not right, she added, still scanning incredulously as if it were some sort of mistake. His eyes are stronger now. Naruto, why did you think you would be better after sleeping? I always get better after sleeping, doesn't everybody? He had been beaten to the verge of death on several occasions. Every time, as long as nothing was too out of place, it would easily heal overnight. Smaller injuries would heal immediately. No, this is something only you can do. It has something to do with the secret you and Hinata will be told when you two graduate, Minato told him. If it's such a big secret, then why are you telling her too? Naruto asked, pouting jealously. Naruto, she's your fiancé. You shouldn't hide things from her about yourself. Doesn't she deserve to know the man she will be marrying? I guess so, Naruto said guiltily. He liked the way Hinata always treated him nicely and the food she made him. He didn't have many friends and he didn't want her to stop. Now, you're feeling fine? Minato asked. Yeah, I like sleeping in Hinata's bed, Naruto said, once again causing the embarrassed girl to faint. Naruto, if I didn't know better, I would think you say things to make her faint on purpose, Minato sighed. Naruto grinned and replied, not my fault if I am too lovable, parroting the explanation of Hinata's fainting to its source. That's not the problem here. The things you say can be interpreted differently than what you thought when you said them. But, I say exactly what I mean, Naruto said indignantly. It's not about what you say, it's how you say it. For example, what you just said about Hinata's bed. But, I do like sleeping in Hinata's bed. It's huge, and soft, and warm, and smells nice. And has Hinata in it, Minato added, which could be taken as meaning you like sleeping with Hinata. What's wrong with that? I like sleeping with Hinata, Naruto replied indignantly. The door to the room slammed open and a glowering Hiashi walked in. What have you been doing to my daughter? This is what's wrong with that, Minato said. Would you like to explain why he should have phrased that differently, Hiashi? What's going on here? Hiashi asked, not liking the way that the boy was brazenly laying on his daughter's bed while she was unconscious with his head in her lap. A little lesson in tact and diplomacy. A sorely needed one, Hiashi said gruffly, after doing a quick scan of his daughter with his Byakugan to be sure she was still pure. Naruto, remember the discussion about where babies come from? Minato asked. Naruto nodded. Well, when you mention sleeping with someone, it will almost always be interpreted as having sexual intercourse with them. Naruto's eyes widened in understanding. So I shouldn't say I like sleeping with Hinata-chan until after I've done that. Naruto exclaimed. Minato sighed, I give up. This day just wasn't going well for him. How many shadow clones can he make? Hiashi asked with a devious smirk twitching at the corners of his mouth. I don't know, the training ground never had enough room for more than a few hundred, and that to him was like one of us doing a few normal clones. I want him to send a dozen clones to the Hyuga compound every day. We have etiquette and diplomacy lessons for the children. He will take all of them at the same time until he understands, and then we will move on to the adult lessons. So you want to teach me to act like I have a giant scroll shoved up my butt all the time? Naruto asked. For you, I am sure we can find room for more than one scroll, Hiashi said with a glare that could freeze fire. And, you will not be sleeping with my daughter until after you're married. But I like sleeping with Hinata. She's a lot softer than dad, and she has boobs. Naruto's words were cut off by Minato's hand. I feel sorry for the Hyugas who have to teach him, Minato said, it isn't like physical training. I don't, Hiashi smiled, the lessons are taught by the Elder Council, so maybe this will keep them from interfering with clan business. This is a punishment for assigning Hinata's guard to Hanabi, isn't it? Minato asked. Do you think it is a coincidence that she just happens to get attacked by a pair of genin who hold a grudge against the Hyuga on the one day her guard just happens to be reassigned? Do you think it might be deliberate? Minato asked. When you make that seal, make sure that it will take these situations into account. They tried to hurt Hinata. Naruto growled, his eyes activating with his sudden burning anger. Hinata belonged to him. He would kill anyone who tried to hurt her. They might have, though we do not know who, Hiashi said, not wanting all the old men dead, but if you happen to make life difficult for them while you learn, I will not hold it against you. Naruto, can you henge to look like a Hyuga? Give yourself long black hair and pale eyes. Easy, Naruto said, performing the hand seals. A moment later, a young Hyuga boy stood in his place. Hiashi, can you see through his henge? Minato asked. Of course I can, the Byakugan can see through any transformation. Hiashi was insulted by the very notion that he would not be able to see through a simple henge. Hiashi, Naruto's henge is not normal. To demonstrate, Minato grabbed the end of Naruto's hair and lifted it up. Hiashi activated his Byakugan and began to concentrate, the veins in his face bulging larger and larger before finally fading. I can't see through it, but I can see that he is under a henge. The chakra is too dense. Now, Naruto, henge into a kunai, Minato said. This is impossible, Hiashi said as he watched the transformation. He moved his hands through the space where Naruto's body should have been before picking up the kunai that was there. It feels as light as a normal kunai. Hiashi threw the kunai and it embedded itself into the door. After a few seconds, the kunai reverted to the original Naruto and fell to the floor where he rubbed his head. Oh. Next time, he was definitely going to be hinging his feet into the pointy end. This is great. Minato laughed, I never even noticed that he changed weight. Do you know what this means? Hiashi looked confused. Imagine if he mastered henge, substitution and shadow clones. Hiashi's jaw dropped in astonishment, you can't be serious. That's insane. But, I've already mastered henge, substitution and shadow clones, Naruto said. He could perform all three jutsu without failing every time. Naruto, you may be able to use those jutsu easily, but you are far from mastering them. When someone has mastered a jutsu, it means that they can perform it perfectly without using the hand seals, Minato added before turning back to Hiashi and adding, now, imagine him mastering the Shadow Shuriken clone and learning Hiraishin. Minato was practically drooling under his mask at the possibilities. Hiashi looked shaken as he thought of the potential, glad that he had agreed to the betrothal. He did not want to on the wrong side of Naruto's kunai if he ever realized that potential. He could be anywhere and everywhere in a hail of objects that only required a comparatively small, to Naruto's reserves at least, amount of chakra. Now, remember how many shadow clones he can make and that he learns everything that the shadow clones do. He could destroy an entire ninja village with a single kunai and not receive a scratch. Before he was 20. I wonder if he can henge into an exploding tag, Minato said. Okazama, you really want to destroy the world, don't you? Besides, he doesn't need to if he learns the exploding shadow clone. Now, aren't you glad you accepted the betrothal? Now, Naruto, we need to help you figure out how to turn off those eyes of yours. Return of the Hummingbird. Minato had returned to the office after an hour with his son. Waiting for him was Itachi Uchiha, or at least a shadow clone of him. You requested my presence, Yondaime? Itachi asked. Yes. From where I sit, we have only a few options. This massacre was not sanctioned by the office of the Hokage, and if it were, all civilians and children would have been spared, along with anyone we believed to be trustworthy and those that could be captured, pending a review for torture and interrogation. That is probable, Itachi agreed. Now, we can claim responsibility for the destruction of the clan, you can be a hero and be removed from Anbu to make a name for yourself as a hero of Konoha and an elite jounin, assuming you pass a psychological test for your mental stability. Minato paused before continuing, this would cause the clans to become less open and might result in repeats of this type of incident from fear. That is one option, Itachi agreed. The second option is that we could claim that you were away on a secret Anbu mission and had nothing to do with the massacre, and another such as Orochimaru was actually the executor of the attack, though this would make us look weak in the eyes of other nations, and Kumo or Iwa may take this as an opportunity to test our defenses. I would expect Iwa, a medium-sized force acting as a group of missing ninja. They would probe our borders before trying to sneak in under the guise of merchants or some similar plan. It would damage trade and external relations due to the increased security measures required and stress the Hyuga forces. You are very good at the what-if game, Uchiha-san. Minato smiled and removed his mask. There is a third option with two variations assuming you are still loyal to Konoha as I believe you to be, and that is to mark you as a missing ninja the moment your shadow clone disperses and use you as a black agent. You would be given a flee on side order in the bingo book and all knowledge of your activities would be for the Hokage's eyes only. I would never be able to act openly within the village, and if they were deemed a security risk, my family would continue to believe me to be a traitor, Itachi said. The first option would be the best for me personally, and the third the best for the village, while the second would be a compromise, unless you choose to have me executed as a traitor. I assure you that will not happen, unless you are actually a traitor or decide to not return to us, Minato said. And, if I chose option 3, what mission would you assign to me? I will of course give you a choice. Both will be dangerous, though one will allow you to see your family, even if they never know it is you. Whether I offer you this depends on one question. How did you know who I am? It is simple. You claim to be Naruto Uzumaki's biological father. Blue eyes and blonde hair are not common traits. Since he was not claimed by the Yamanaka clan and Tsunade was too old to bear children, that left civilians and visitors and the fourth Hokage as the only viable candidates for him to receive those traits. Combined with the fact that you would never place this burden on anyone in Konoha and his mother being the former Jinchuriki due to her bloodline, it took very little to deduce your identity, Itachi said. I see, so I won't need you to perform any more assassinations tonight. There is also the fact that I was standing right over there under a Jinjutsu when you stumbled out of the door to the resting place of the Hokages, Itachi added dryly. Minato laughed at this, I was sure there was no one here. You are as good as they say. No, I am better, Itachi said without a hint of boasting. Very well. I want you to return to Konoha and report to Inoichi for a psych evaluation. No one is to see your face except myself and the clan heads and Ibiki. You will tell Inoichi and Ibiki everything you know about Danzo's operations. That may be less necessary than you would think, Itachi said, his Sharingan coming to life. For a moment, Minato thought that Itachi was about to attack him, but instead, he turned and there was a flash of steel as a young boy in an Anbu mask was knocked off of his feet. A second later, 4 Anbu appeared and had the boy restrained. Anyone else in the room that I should be aware of? Minato asked with a sigh. No, that is everyone, Itachi assured. And why are there any Anbu here in the first place? I ordered a psych evaluation to check for loyalties done on every member of Anbu before they are allowed to perform their duties. Ibiki and Inoichi are postponing the evaluations of anyone who they have personally evaluated within the past month in order to maintain village security. We will be rotated back into the pool of those to be evaluated once the other evaluations are complete. That's actually a pretty good idea, Minato said. Pass on my thanks when you go off duty, though from now on, make me aware of your presence as you or I come on duty or leave and pass it along to the rest of the Anbu. You already know that anything you hear in this office can be discussed only privately with myself or Sarutobi or my successor. Yes, Hokage-sama, they replied as one. 2 of them then returned to their hiding places, while the other 2 maintained a hold on the intruder. Now, who are you? Minato asked. I have no name. The boy had dark hair and clothes and a tanto strapped to his back and a neutral expression on his face. You have an assigned title or mission. I am a root operative designated to infiltrate the standard ninja corps and the successor to Danzo should he become incapacitated or killed, though my training is far from complete. I am unable to operate independently and would like to request an interim commander be assigned to train me. You know, I have the perfect person for the job. Someone with Black Ops experience and can be trusted to do what is right regardless of personal sacrifice. Minato looked up at Itachi with a grin. You want me to be the new leader of Root? Itachi asked, with a look of surprise. No, that would be a complete waste of your talents. I want Kakashi-kun to do it. You are going to do the one thing that could have prevented the coup attempt in the first place. Itachi quirked an eyebrow at Minato's statement. You're going to be the Hokage. You can't be serious, Itachi said. Of course, you wouldn't be Hokage in name, but you'd be my body double for the standard ninja operations. You would assign missions and receive mission reports and generally act like a Hokage. If an emergency situation occurs, you will of course immediately contact me to assist or take over. Any changes to village security plans and the like will have to be approved by me. I will execute any public relations events myself to prevent too many people being around to blow your cover, and I will attend all council meetings in which you will act under disguise as the Uchiha representative. And you will provide a summary of the day's events for me to peruse, highlighting any important items you believe I might take an interest in. And, should anything happen to me before I have Naruto ready to take over, you will have my recommendation as my replacement since you will have already been trained. If not, then you can just as easily take over the civilian matters which are currently under the third Hokage's jurisdiction. Why do you wish to punish me so badly? Itachi asked. At least you can use shadow clones to do the paperwork. I wonder if Sarutobi ever figured that out. And, you can't. Itachi was surprised. Coming back from the dead had some repercussions. That is why I have issued Tsunade an ultimatum. 1 week to return so she can get me back in working order, or she goes into the bingo book with a kill on side order for being an accessory to every attack upon the Hokage. I gave Jiraiya the order to bring her back 3 years ago, so it is about time I got treated. You put a lot of trust in a man who murdered almost his entire family, Itachi said. And I'll give you even more before I am done. Do you know the chakra battery technique? I do. I know all field medic jutsu. I used too many techniques today, so give me as much chakra as you can before dispelling. I'll expect you to be in this office first thing tomorrow waiting for me with an assessment by both Inoichi and Ibiki. Return of the Hummingbird. For Naruto and Hinata, the class was outside for the day. Because of the attack, a genin team had taken over their usual classroom to do repairs to the wall with an experienced craftsman to guide them. Because of their venue, the class focused on physical training for most of the day, including running laps around the schoolyard first thing in the morning as a test of endurance. Everyone, except Shikamaru, made it through at least one lap around the school. A few of the girls dropped out of the second lap to gossip. Some of the civilian children dropped out next, followed by Chaoji. After this, there were several laps before the students began dropping out one by one. Soon, there were only 3 contenders left. Sasuke was in the lead, with Kiba in second place, and Naruto in third, due to the fact that he was still adjusting to the new level of weight he had set for himself that morning. Due to the competitive nature of the 3, none of them would give up, though Sasuke was somehow brooding as he ran, rather than bouncing around and shouting taunts like Kiba and Naruto did to each other. Eventually, Naruto caught up with Kiba as his body began to adjust. Just as he was passing Kiba, a whistle blew and they were called in to eat lunch. Naruto raced towards Hinata, while the other 2 collapsed in exhaustion. To Naruto's surprise, he was a popular person at lunch. Everyone was asking about how his eyes had transformed and he had beaten the instructor. No big deal, Naruto grinned, enjoying the attention. I just have a new Jujutsu. It's really awesome and can do a lot like see through walls and where I should hit people. I can even see hidden Anbu. Just watch this. Naruto activated his eyes and scanned around. Anbu 1. He shouted, pointing to a corner of the schoolyard. There was a swirl of leaves, indicating a shunshin, but Naruto could see the trail he left and spun towards a tree, pointing up in the branches. The branch shook and Naruto spun and pointed at the roof of the academy. This time, in a swirl of leaves, the bull mask Anbu appeared next to him and grabbed his finger. Stop doing that. Why should I? You're just pissed because I caught you spying on the Hyuga yesterday, Naruto said confidently. I wasn't spying. The man said angrily. Oh, so you're just a stalker. The Anbu released Naruto and stepped back a few paces, taking deep calming breaths. You're lucky that the Hokage made attacking children an automatic death sentence. The Anbu executed another shunshin. I can still see you behind the wall. Naruto yelled, laughing as loud curses echoed across the yard. The other children joined him in his mirth until Naruto collapsed, clutching his head. Hey, are you okay, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. Yeah, I'm fine, Naruto said, just one of the elders jukened one of my shadow clones in the head. That really stings. Dad is going to be pissed when one of my other clones tells him. Naruto, shadow clones are a jounin level technique. How many can you have and still have enough energy for training? I don't know, Naruto said, I only actually made one this morning, and he split in 2, one stayed with dad and the other with to learn whatever the Hyugas wanted to teach me. I can't believe they are forcing me to take lessons on manners just because I said I like sleeping with Hinata and that she has BMMBFSS. His face was buried in the body parts he had been about to mention in order to stop him from finishing his sentence. So she's your girlfriend? Kiba asked jealously. No, that would be too troublesome, Shikamaru stated, he's her betrothed. I can't believe you've already slept together. My mom said I am not even allowed to think about it for another 5 years or she'll neuter me herself, Kiba said. Of course. We've done it twice, Naruto said, completely forgetting the lesson that he had been taught the day before. Ino and Sakura were looking at a very embarrassed Hinata in shock. I can't believe you did that. Sakura said, Mom always said that Naruto was nothing but trouble. What's wrong with that? I sleep with my dad all the time. Hinata, what was it like having sex? Ino asked, desperate to hear this juicy gossip. What? I didn't know she had sex, Naruto said. So she hasn't had sex with you? Ino asked, but you said you slept with her twice. Yeah, the first time, she fainted after being attacked by bullies, and then I fell asleep after I took her home. Then, we were at the Hyuga estate yesterday when the Uchiha clan was all killed and we were sent to her room while the adults dealt with everything. Ino sighed unhappily, her gossip had turned out just to be proof that Naruto really needed the etiquette lessons desperately. Wait, Sasuke's family was killed. She shrieked before she and almost every other girl ran to comfort him or molest him depending on your point of view. What if Naruto learns Hummingbird style? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.